Moneycontrol Policy Next, the Big Karnataka Resurgence.
Big Karnataka Resurgence, co-powered by Reliance Industries and even partners Canara Bank, Motilal Oswal, 99acres.com and Diamond Live Line. We are delighted to host the event from none other than India's Silicon Valley, Bengaluru. The state of Karnataka goes to polls in 5 days, and we look forward to bringing you a threadbare analysis of what makes this state a high-powered battle. We have conceived Policy Next as a series of conversations and debates to discuss issues and policies that shape our polity and economy. So very warm welcome once again. I would like to inform you that we are live across all social media platforms, Moneycontrol's YouTube channel, Facebook, Twitter pages, as well as Moneycontrol website and Policy Next microsite. Also, please remember to share your thoughts with us with the hashtag #MCPolicyNext. Karnataka has attracted the highest foreign direct investment in 2021-22 at 1.76 lakh crore rupees. That is $22.1 billion, which is 38% share of total FDI in India. And forget not, this was during the peak of the pandemic. Karnataka also bagged the top achiever position under the Ease of Doing Business ranking of all states in 2022, which is released by the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade of the Union Government. This was the state's best performance under the Ease of Doing Business ranking since the inception of this assessment. Karnataka improved its position from 17th in 2019 to the top achiever in Ease of Doing Business ranking in 2022. In today's multiple sessions, we aim to navigate, deep dive, and engage in meaningful conversations in all of these multiple fronts that form the highlights of Karnataka. We aim to discuss what seems to be working for Karnataka as an investment destination and what is not. What are the policies that have shaped the state? And most importantly, going ahead, what should be the agenda for the next government? We hope the various sessions today take you on a roller coaster ride through all the facets of Karnataka, giving you deep insights. To begin with, our first session, we aim to analyze which way this crucial state will swing in the elections. How do voters decide their vote? What are the big issues that will determine who will win this crucial state? Karnataka will also decide which party could be resurrected and which party's ambitions might be emboldened for the South. And do not forget to tweet with the hashtag #MCPolicyNext. To initiate the first session, let me invite my colleague Shweta Punj, who will moderate this session. The stage is all yours, Shweta.
Thank you very much, Meghna. It's an honor and privilege to be here amongst all of you. And I must say that we are all very happy and very pleasantly surprised that we've had a full house. I had always heard about Bangalore's very engaged civil society, and I'm witnessing it firsthand today. So thank you very much for making this event already a success, and we promise that we will not disappoint you. We will begin with what will be a very insightful session, or at least that's the promise that we are making to you. On the state of Karnataka, we have with us two people who have really analyzed the state, how it votes, what are the issues that are dominating this election, and what have been issues in the past that have dominated Karnataka's politics and economics. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Sanjay Kumar, Professor, Center for the Study of Developing Studies, Societies, and Dr. Sandeep Shastri, Director, Academics, NITTE Education Trust. Dr. Shastri and Mr. Kumar, thank you very much. Mr. Kumar has come down from Delhi after conducting a thorough survey across all districts of Karnataka, and he's going to be presenting some findings. And Dr. Shastri, of course, has been writing prolifically and analyzing Karnataka's politics and economics for decades. Thank you very much, an honor and privilege to be on the stage with the two of you today. I'm hoping to come off more informed about the state of Karnataka, because it is truly such a paradox, right? It is one of the most developed states. I was just going through some numbers. According to an internal analysis by the Income Tax Department, Bangalore is set to become the country's second highest direct, in terms of direct tax collections, surpassing Delhi. In FY23, Bangalore collected 2.4 trillion rupees in taxes, second only to Mumbai, which I think is probably the reason why we are seeing so much political action here. I believe there is a Prime Minister roadshow, a 2-day roadshow happening starting tomorrow. So there is a lot of interest. And let me begin with you, Mr. Kumar. If you could please share with us some of the findings that your survey, your analysis revealed about the state of Karnataka.
Thank you, Shweta. I think before I start talking about the survey, some findings of the survey, what does survey do? Survey helps us to connect with what is happening on the ground. And for Karnataka election, it is very important to have your ears on the ground. Why do I say that? As an election analyst or as a psephologist, what do? We try and look at the past data. Past data is very helpful in looking at the current trends. But I think Karnataka, you need to have your ears on the ground, very closely watching what is happening in Karnataka. And that is where survey has been very, very important. Why I say that it is very important to have your ears on the ground. Past electoral data is not helpful in looking at what might happen in Karnataka. What is the past data? If you talk to generally people, general sense that there is a sense of pro-incumbency in the country, which is to say, many governments are getting re-elected. To cite the data, since 2022, 17 states have gone to poll, 13 governments have got re-elected. And this is more beneficial for the BJP. BJP was defending 11 of its state government during the last 2.5 years. And BJP managed to win all assembly elections except one, which is Himachal. So there is a general sense that there is a pro-incumbency mood in favor of BJP. So BJP should win elections in Karnataka as well, whatever may come, whatever may be the issue, whatever people may be talking about, because there is a general pro-incumbency mood in favor of BJP, maybe because of Prime Minister Modi. So that's a general sense. If we look at about the Congress, there is a general counter belief that Congress should win election. Without having your ears on the ground, look at the data, the past data. What is the data? The data suggests, if you look at Karnataka, what has happened in Karnataka, last 30 years, no government has got re-elected. So people generally believe that this is now the turn for Congress, because there has been a BJP government for the last 3.5 years. So Congress should win election, besides other factor, looking at the past data. But there is also an exception we should not remember. Kerala is also one of the states where for the last 40 years, no government got re-elected. But look what has happened in 2021. The government was re-elected. The left government was re-elected. The point I'm trying to say is the past data, past electoral trend is not helpful in looking at what is happening in Karnataka. You need to closely watch what is happening on the ground. Now coming back to, so what do we find from our survey? What is happening on the ground? I think if we talk about the issues, 2 or 3 things have emerged very strongly. If we talk about corruption, both the political parties, the 2 main rivals, Congress and BJP, are talking about corruption. One party is talking about 40% government. The BJP is talking about 85% corruption, referring to the late Prime Minister Rajeev Gandhi's statement that if 1 rupee travel from Delhi, only 15 paisa reaches to the people and 18 paisa 85 paisa gets lost in the corruption. So this is an issue of concern. This comes out very closely from the survey. Issue of concern. But my own sense is that this is not an issue on which people are going to vote in Karnataka. Why do I say that? Because on this account, people don't find either of the two parties any different. Because both the parties are countering, challenging each other. Also, there is a data to suggest. If I look at the 13 assembly elections where we have asked this question during last couple of years, in 12 out of 13 states, people mentioned that corruption has increased a lot. But look at what happened in these 12 states. 66 governments got re-elected and 6 governments were voted out of power. Again, an indication that corruption is not an issue on which people are voting. If that was the case, I think most of these governments would have lost, because in 12 out of 13 states, large number of people said, this includes UP, Uttarakhand, Goa, and several other states which went to poll during 2.5 years. So corruption is an issue of concern among a large number of Karnataka voters, but my own sense is that this is not the issue on which people are going to vote. Two other issues, unemployment and price rise. Very loud noise about increasing unemployment and increasing price rise. But again, my own sense is that, again, this is not going to be an issue of voting. I have no evidence to say why this is not going to be this is not going to be an issue of voting. But I look at the past data in this context. And if I look at the elections which has taken place during last, say, 3 years, 4 or 5 years, since 2015-16, in large number of states, even national elections, 2019, large number of people raised concern about increasing price rise, increasing unemployment. But what happened? Large number of those governments got re-elected. And there's a clear relationship when we do the analysis, that even when people raised concern about unemployment and price rise, among them also these voters who are very concerned about rising unemployment, and this was the case in UP, Uttarakhand, Goa, even Gujarat, where BJP registered such a massive victory. The concern among people was very large, very big about growing unemployment and price rise. Still, look at the verdict in these states. Again, an evidence that people have not voted, at least in the recent election, on these issues. I think the issue of reservation is could turn out to be an important issue. More than that, if I look at the electoral verdict of the last 5 years, emotive issue, जिसको हम कहते हैं भावनात्मक, emotional issues, that have started dominating the election scene. The issues on the ground has very little connect with how people are voting. People are getting swayed with emotional issues, the issues of identity. Some issues have come into play during last couple of days. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but my own sense is that whatever has been talked about for the last 1 month or little more than 1 month, those are not going to be the crucial issue of voting when people go out to vote on the 10th of May. I think the emotive issue, the issue of identity again is going to, whether it is a question of identity of caste, which is related to the issue of reservation, or the issue of the religious identity, which will get sharpened maybe in the coming few days, on the issue of this Bajrang Bali, Bajrang Dal, etc. These may be the issues which might shape voting decision, maybe more than the real issues which are on the ground, on which I think the election should be contested. But my own sense is that, sadly, that's not happening.
Let me go over to Dr. Shastri. Dr. Shastri, the BJP is, of course, playing the double engine ki sarkar. There's also been development, if you look at the Foxconn manufacturing facility that's been brought into the state, or the expressway that's connecting Bangalore and Mysore, or other infrastructure developments that have taken place in the state. But if you look at what Mr. Kumar's research has thrown up, that this election is about identity, it's about emotive issues, it could be about caste, it could be about Bajrangi, pro-Bajrangi, anti-Bajrangi, we don't know. The whole narrative seems to have slipped out of our hands, and now there is, to quote a cliche, a Nataka, being played out in Karnataka. What's your sense?
Thank you for that question and thank you for having me here. I'd like to steal a part of the credit you are given, Sanjay Bhai, because both of us do this survey together. Okay. Both of us are part of Lokniti, and
Of course, yes.
so the work that Sanjay talked about, I endorse every word and every statement that was there. Coming back to the larger question you raised, what Karnataka has seen in the last 2 months is what I would call 2.5 narratives. There has been a clear BJP narrative in a state election, led by its central leadership very strongly, focusing on a range of national issues. Very little talk about what their state government was doing. Very little mention of state governments. This is one of the few times I've seen central leaders not mentioning the name of the chief minister as part of their speeches, which has not happened in any other state. So, a clear focus. The second narrative was the Congress narrative, where they said no Adani, no disqualification of Rahul Gandhi. We are focusing on state issues. We have a state government here, we are the opposition here, let's make that the issue. And this was the clear narrative that was emerging in the state. Once the announcement of candidates happened, you had another half narrative coming up, because I believe the Janata Dal was always a distant third in the competition, and then suddenly their narrative started, where they said, we are the only regional party, you both are national parties, you both have failed, so that narrative also started. What we noticed, the point which Sanjay ji made, which you also referred to, we both have been saying right through the campaign that in the last few days of this campaign, there could be a sudden shift. And that's exactly what's happened. The narrative of central government performance, state government performance is pushed to the back burner. And the whole question of identity in terms of hurting the sentiments of a segment of society comes to the fore. And the Congress is left with no choice but to defend itself on that. You have their leader saying, we'll also build a range of Hanuman temples.
So today you're saying the tide has turned, because 1 week ago when I met Mr. Kumar in Delhi and we discussed this, he told me that the mood is very pro-Congress. But today you're saying that the tide...
I'm not saying that the mood is now anti-Congress or anything. I'm saying the lead that the Congress seemed to have in terms of during the campaign, that lead is not what it seemed to be, because the whole focus of the campaign has changed. Now, is that going to impact the way people vote? Because I was just now telling somebody, the issues about hurting the sentiments of a particular segment of society, when one party raises, are those people who feel that the proposed ban on a group would hurt the sentiments of a religious group, are those people not already supporting the party? Are they not already supporting the party? Did the party which put it in its manifesto hope that a minority consolidation will happen? Because our own study shows there is something like a 12%, the vote that the BJP got in 2018 from the Muslim community, and the vote share we were noticing coming out in the survey that we did, there was a dip of around 11 to 12 percentage points. And that seemed to be going to the Janata Dal, and the BJP was where it is in terms of Muslim support. So has that factor been brought in by the Congress so that we are able to consolidate them? So there are various issues here.
Sure.
But I think the important point is, will the narrative of the last few days be able to undo the narrative of the last 3 months? Is it strong enough? Is the wind of tomorrow and day after tomorrow strong enough to change what has happened in 3 months is the question.
Okay, Mr. Kumar, you want to come in?
No, I think what has happened during last couple of days at least, if you look at the early days of campaign, Congress was setting the narrative. Now BJP has set the narrative and Congress is gone on a defensive. Either they're saying they will build X number of temples, or there are lots of Congress leaders who have come out to explain this was not meant this was not meant this is, so they are offering clarifications. All this suggests that maybe this was not what was desired at this stage of the campaign. So the sense I get is that Congress have gone somewhat on a defensive. How much it is going to hurt Congress, we have to wait and see.
So, when you look at the campaign from both the parties, while the Congress had focused on hyper-local issues, but you're right, now they are more on the back foot. They're constantly trying to show their allegiance to a particular community. And we know that Prime Minister Modi is going to be holding a roadshow, a 2-day roadshow in the city of Bengaluru, which is a very important urban center. I want to ask the two of you, if you were to analyze the trends of the past elections where prime ministers held roadshows at a very aggressive pace, have they turned the mood, have they turned the sentiment, and has it translated into more votes on ground?
I would say context matters. I could quote you a number of examples where it has changed the mood, Gujarat being a case. I could also quote a number of examples where those road shows may have had an impact but did not really define and decide the verdict that came. See. Let me tell you what is a common refrain I am hearing, and this indicates the popularity of the Prime Minister. In whatever I've heard across the state from people, what is said is, next year, Lok Sabha election, we are all voting for the Prime Minister. This is not about who will be in power in Delhi. This is about who will be in power in Bengaluru, in Karnataka. And that's a different issue.
So the double engine
Modi ji, people will say very popular, but next year in Delhi, yes. But they will remember Karnataka was the first state in 1984 which made that distinction between a national verdict and a state verdict, and continues to. North India has taken it from us now. If states in the north are doing it today, that's what we started way back.
But I want to come back with something. In 2018, Karnataka did vote for the BJP, though it did not emerge as the single largest party. Could this be the year when Karnataka decides to vote more emphatically because it did not get the government that it voted for in greater numbers?
Let me respond, and then I'm sure Sanjay ji will have something to say. 2013, the BJP was decimated in Karnataka because Mr. Yediyurappa left the party and he said, my KJP is the real BJP. Siddaramaiah becomes chief minister. Next year, when you have a national election, Karnataka was that state where the highest percentage of respondents across the country said, we voted for the BJP because Mr. Modi is the prime ministerial candidate. If I remember right, Sanjay ji, 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 of BJP voters said, we voted for the BJP because of the prime ministerial candidate. Right. Same 2014 when voters were asked, how good is the Siddaramaiah government? 90% said very good. 90%. 2018, you do not give a clear verdict to the BJP. Right. Partly because of the performance in the old Mysore region. Next year, you give them all but, Satishji, all but 3 of the states, right? 3 of the seats, right? All but 3 of the seats in the Lok Sabha election. Now, So here the voter makes this clear distinction between state and center, starting with 84. Rajiv Gandhi got that 24 out of 28 seats in Karnataka. 3 months later, Hegde comes back with a clear majority. So this state has its feet on the ground.
Okay.
The voter knows
It will
what
make
she
its-
is deciding and is very clear as to why they are deciding what they are deciding.
Okay. Yes, Mr.
My own sense is that if you, as I said, you have to keep your ears on the ground. Yes, if you look at, there could be trends of this kind that when a party do not get a majority next time, people try and vote for that party in a big way. I suspect that's not happening in Karnataka because if you, I am mentioning this again and again. If you listen to the voices of Karnataka across the state, I don't get that sense that BJP would be in a position to get a much bigger mandate compared to 2008. That's not happening, I believe.
Okay. I want to ask you about your survey. Who emerged as the most sought after chief ministerial candidate for Karnataka?
I would say in this respect, Karnataka state assembly election is turning out to be very, very different compared to many of the other states. Siddaramaiah has emerged as the most popular choice, 40%.
This is another 40%, not that.
40%. And Mr. Bommai has been mentioned by 22% of the voters. And remember, in our survey, we don't offer names. We don't offer menu. It's a spontaneous name recall by the voters. This is a very high number, 40% people of Karnataka taking, and this is cross-section of people. This is not interviews conducted only in Bengaluru or Mysore and in urban area. This is a classic representative sample of Karnataka. So 40% people said Siddaramaiah and 22% mentioned Bommai. There have been only few instances where a sitting chief minister's rating would be such low compared to leader of an opposition party. And this is more peculiar, when the opposition party has not declared him as the chief ministerial candidate. So it's a very high rating for Siddaramaiah, very popular face across region, across caste community, across age groups, etc. Very, very popular face.
When you look at the first-time voters that are going to be voting this time, it's a fairly large number. But when I hear the campaign, I don't look at issues and I don't see a language that the youth of Karnataka speaks. Is it because there is a lot of voter apathy amongst the youth? Is that the reason why political parties are not addressing them as a constituency? Or are they completely missing the boat here?
There are two different issues here. Urban centers in Karnataka have had lower voter turnout. Since 1983, the district with the lowest voter turnout every election, parliament, assembly, whichever, is Bangalore urban district. Every election.
Long weekends.
District headquarters and the district headquarters will have a lower voter turnout as compared to the district. Now coming to your other question. I did this little study from our data. First time voter. The way the first-time voter votes is very often indicative of which way the state would go. Whenever a party has secured a majority in the state, they have always secured a little higher percentage of votes among the first-time voters. Last time, when the BJP fell short of a majority, they actually got less votes among first-time voters as compared to its overall share. So let's look for that indicator.
Yeah.
The way the first-time voter goes is actually a barometer of how the trend could be in terms of an election.
Mr. Kumar, would you like to comment on this? In terms of the issues that are being raised by the political parties, is there anything that relates to the first-time voter?
I think many times this question is being asked. Do we see any difference when we look at the first-time voters with regard to the issues and also with regard to women? We don't find in our surveys that the issues which concerns the women voters or the issues which concerns the young voters are very different compared to the issues which concerns the common sets of voters. Slight difference. If I talk in terms of the young voters are more concerned about the issue of unemployment. In this survey also, when we conducted the survey among cross sections of voters, 25% of the total voters said unemployment is going to be the big issue in this election, or is it that's a big issue in this election. Among the young voters, and I am referring to 18 to 24, 38%. So unemployment becomes a slightly bigger issue among the young voters. When we talk about the women voters, its price rise becomes a slightly bigger issue among the women voters. But except these two, we don't find on other issues remarkably different opinion or attitudes if we are talking about the young voters and the women voters.
So if voting were to take place tomorrow, I want to get both of your numbers in on the number of seats that the BJP, Congress and JDS could get.
I have no mechanism to convert it sitting on the dais, that if elections are held tomorrow.
You've calculated everything.
I calculate everything, but I calculate and keep something in my pocket also.
No. You have
So
to tell us.
I get a clear sense if elections are held tomorrow, certainly Congress has a decisive edge over BJP. Certainly it's a decisive edge over BJP. Now if you talk about numbers, and I get a sense that
Absolute
Congress
majority for the Congress?
I get a sense that Congress is ahead over BJP by, say, 5 or 6% vote at this moment. If elections are held tomorrow, this 5-6% votes may not give a huge majority to the Congress, because this might get Congress, say, 116, 120 seats, not more than that. It's not a kind of a wave where you can expect Congress getting 135, 140 seats. That's not the case at this moment.
Okay. Dr. Shastri?
In the last few days, one word has become very popular. The word is Jai. I'm not going to say what comes after that. I would say Jai Karnataka in terms of where we should be going tomorrow. 224 seats in the state. I would go with Sanjay Bhai's logic that if he said tomorrow, I'll say today. If elections are to be held today...
Today it's already 5:30. No voting can take place.
If elections are to be held today, the Congress seems to have a nose ahead. But that's not a very long nose. It's a very short nose which it has ahead. And 4 days is a long time to change things. But that 4 days change would require a lot of momentum change to undo a trend that has developed over a long period of time. I'm not saying that's not doable, but Karnataka would be making quite some history if they managed to do that.
So how much of that depends on all the wonderful people who've come here today?
That's all of them. If they all go and vote, that's the point.
If they go out and vote, how much of it depends on people of Bangalore? Because like you said, Bangalore has been associated with a lot of voter apathy. A lot of people from the north have come.
I'll narrate you a small anecdote.
Yes.
We found a constituency in an election where 18% of voters in that polling booth had actually voted. And that was an area which had a very, 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 very high concentration of educated and affluent voters. So my students went in the next day there to find out why you didn't vote. So most people kept their hands behind when they were answering our question. And those who did admit, they said, no. Everybody is corrupt. All parties are bad. All candidates are bad. That's why I don't want to waste my time to go and vote. My student asked the next question. Yeah, I agree with you. Who were the candidates in your constituency? I don't know who the candidates were, but all are corrupt and all are ineffective. So, last time, many of you will remember, our voting happened on a Saturday. And Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday were holidays. We did a study.
So this time it's middle
just
of
10
the week.
seconds.
Yes, absolutely.
We did a study in Bangalore airport on the Thursday evening. Families going out on a holiday. Voting? We have 5 days at a stretch to go on a holiday. We went to the bus stand, railway station. Here also people going out, but they were saying, my vote is in Belgaum, my vote is in Gulbarga. We are using this time to go back and vote.
Bangalore, not looking very good right now. Okay, Very quickly, a show of hands of whoever has got their voter ID. Wow, it's a full house. So I do hope that you will go and cast your vote. Thank you very much, Dr. Shastri and Mr. Kumar. Always a pleasure, always very enlightening to hear your analysis.
Thank you.
We wish
Thank you very
Karnataka
much.
the very best. May the best party win and this time come with a decisive majority. Meghna, over to you.
I would request Shweta to please give a token of appreciation to the panelists, please. Thank you, panelists. That was a very candid discussion on your view on what side the state will swing, though the actual result we still await to see. Before I call upon for the next session, I would request all the audience to please put your phones on silent, please. Karnataka, as we know, is already the largest software exporter and is also home to over 6,000 startups registered with DPIIT. So without any further ado, let's dive straight into the second session. What does India's Silicon Valley want? I'll invite my colleague Chandrasekhar on stage to moderate the session.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to invite my panelists. I'm going to invite the founders first, Chaitra Chidanand, the founder of Salt. We also have Vivek from Bounce, Vivekanand from Bounce. We have K. Ganesh and Sanjay Swami, prominent investors from the city. Bangalore, please wake up. A huge round of applause for all the speakers. Thank you. Ganesh is asking Sanjay, how has he lost so much weight? Is it a sign of the times in the startup ecosystem?
No, Ganesh is wearing a coat, I'm not.
No, actually, founders
But I want to
should
take
be
objection.
losing weight.
I'm also a
VCs
founder.
are sitting on a lot of money.
No, I'm a
which they are
founder
not
of a
giving.
VC fund, so I'm also an entrepreneur.
No, but great to have all of you on stage, and it's so heartening to see a full house in Bengaluru. We were very worried about the weather. We were worried about the PM's roadshow. We were worried about the location, but touch wood, so far, so good. So I'm going to give the founders the first word. Do you all care about elections in the state? Do you all only care about funding? Are you following any of the commentary around elections at all? Or are you just like Series A, Series B, unicorn, sunicorn? Chaitra, go first.
So one of the first thing I remember being excited for as I was turning 18 was the fact that I'll get to vote. So of course I'm excited about the elections. I've been a political enthusiast for many years. And Karnataka has been a very interesting state. So, so the short answer is yes.
What about your employees? Are they going to vote?
Yes. In fact, one of my first hires, his name is Sai Madhusudan, and he alerted me to this. So he's from Tamil Nadu. And every election, he takes leave and he goes to his home constituency and he volunteers over there.
That's
So,
very heartening
yes.
to hear. Vivek, do you follow politics? Do you follow what's happening every day with respect to the issues being discussed?
We all vote, and we really care about which government comes in, and it's going to play a very important role in everything, right? It's a very macro thing, which can have impact on every startup, the funding environment, to everything. So we all take elections very seriously, and we push people to go out and vote. So, yeah.
Interestingly, BJP and Congress in their manifestos this time have announced a startup fund. So if Sanjay and Ganesh don't give you money, you can count on the BJP Congress to help.
I don't think those funds are usually for this kind of investments, but yeah.
But, top of mind, what are the main issues you think that entrepreneurs really worry about when it comes to a state election? And, as Meghna said, Bengaluru is the startup capital of the country, though Delhi might dispute that sometimes. But we are home to, I think, 42 unicorns and over 5,000 startups. So what do entrepreneurs care about when it comes to Bengaluru?
I think the biggest thing is, can we talk to the concern in the government when we have a problem? So usually all of this is seen as a black box, and if anything, you need help or you need clarity. Most of the times it's clarity, not even help. You're usually in a black box, and now then you start calling people you think might know someone to get an audience, right? So I think first and foremost, irrespective of which party comes in, if they're really worried about making a dent or impact for startups, I think it's about how can they talk to startups and what kind of communication channels can be built in. I think that can take everything for a very long way.
Otherwise, you have some random geo and everybody is wondering, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Chaitra?
I think, unlike Vivek's business, which gets affected by state policy on transportation and stuff, I'm lucky to be in a field which largely gets affected by SEBI or RBI, right? So it's more centrally, the jurisdiction is more central in that sense. And in Bangalore, honestly, as a startup founder, what I care about the most is infrastructure. I would love to see infrastructure development happen at 10x the speed that it's happening right now. And I don't know which political party delivers it. I honestly don't care. But I think Bangalore needs that. That's probably getting people, right? Mobility within Bangalore to go to one meeting, from one meeting to another, even if it's 2 kilometers away, it takes 32 minutes to an hour of my time. So that's really the biggest concern. Other than that, I think just in general, in terms of startup schemes, etc., we keep hearing that, there is this scheme, that scheme, but there is no way of knowing how to even avail it. And even the process of availing a particular scheme seems like, not worth the ROI on time and effort, especially if you're beyond a certain stage as a startup, right? And I'm not even talking about Series A or anything. So we are a seed stage startup. So even for us, to avail something, it seems by popular consensus talking to people that it's so much effort that, it's the 50 lakhs that you get is probably not going to be worth it at our stage.
Right. Ganesh? What issues do you care about as an investor, as an serial entrepreneur?
Yeah, so, firstly, I'm primarily an entrepreneur and promoter.
That's what all investors like to call themselves.
We raise money from people like Sanjay, we just did once. No, I think, firstly, I think, I must say, I've spent 25 years in Bangalore now. My first startup, which I did, was in Delhi. After that, all the other startups in Bangalore. The good part is, across these 25 years, across different parties, including coalition government, one part or the other, Bangalore has been extremely startup-friendly support ecosystem. Okay, right? I must also clarify that over the years, even at the rest of the country also, the startup ecosystem has become more easy to do startups and entrepreneurship. So very clearly that it is, I'm extremely grateful and happy that despite politics, despite changes in parties, we seem to have done a very good job of supporting startups. Having said that, there is, entrepreneurs, we always sleep like a baby, okay? Which basically means we get up in the night every 2 hours and cry, okay, right? So therefore it's very normal for us to cry and to expect more. Clearly, government's job, first and foremost job, is to provide infrastructure. And again, I'm not talking about any specific party. Today we get up, as an entrepreneur gets up, first worry is, will you have electricity? Will you have water? If you have both, would you get a car or a taxi or a two-wheeler to be able to get where you want to go? Even if you get it, after that, if you have to, God forbid, navigate Ijipura or Silk Board or Belandur, you're gone. Okay, right? You're gone as in this. So I think first and simplest thing is make this city livable. Okay, fundamental one. Because then a lot of it will come. Because government job first is infrastructure. Okay, right? Fortunately, on the digital infrastructure side, we have had great developments thanks to Geo, thanks to ONDC, thanks to digital public goods, huge amount of UPI, the amount of leapfrogging we have done on the digital infrastructure. Okay, right? Yeah, for digital payments, you take it, it's an envy of the world. So fortunately, one of the lowest data bandwidth costs in the world. So there are a lot of enabling on the digital side that has already happened, which is great for startup ecosystem. For us to build an inclusive thing, not just a monopoly of few large companies like Amazon, Flipkart, or Big Baskets of the world, where we can get SMEs to come in and actually participate, courtesy the digital infrastructure. For me, basically, if I can provide me simple roads, good water, clear the garbage in time, I think government would have done 80% of the job. One. Second, I also think government, we are very under leveraging government as a consumer or as a user for startup. We have tried on our startups, less than 1% of the revenue comes from government, whereas it can actually be 30 to 40% because of the size and scale of government. Some of the transparency, she mentioned about how to access it, to be able to do that would go a long way. Because employment generation has to come from startups, right? You can't create out of anywhere else. So if you are able to somehow get the government to come in, one is infrastructure, two, really utilize services of startups, okay, right? I think we would have achieved. That would be my...
Right, so infrastructure clearly top of mind, which is why we have a dedicated panel to discuss Bengaluru's urban mess next. So infra is one and government is the consumer. Sanjay, I think you have strong views on this, but would you like to weigh in on the infra side? I think you live in the outskirts of Bengaluru, right? Whitefield.
Yeah, Ganesh didn't recognize me because he's never come and visited me in Whitefield. Chaitra, we missed out funding her because she said, I'm not going to cross Marathalli Bridge to come and meet you. And, I just got to meet...
You should live in Bengaluru. You can't live in
I'm a Kannadiga, by the way. Studied in UVC, St. Joseph's and stuff like that. But, look, the physical infrastructure, it is what it is. To me, it's an important thing beyond the startup ecosystem. So I'm not going to weigh in on that. I'm, trusting that whichever government comes in recognizes that that's a core thing they have to address in order to a good part of their charter. And all the promises in the world, are not going to matter right now. I think we'll just have to see. It's not something that can be fixed overnight. To the extent that people in our ecosystem can help facilitate addressing some of these issues, always happy to put up our hands, but it's not fundamentally something that I expect in the near term is going to move the needle for the startup ecosystem, right? Just something we all have to do as citizens of Karnataka and of Bangalore. So I want to elaborate a bit on what Ganesh said, right? I mean, if there's one thing I want to see here, I'm really disappointed that we are sitting, I had a small part to play in the early days of the Aadhaar program and subsequently on UPI and stuff. All of this was defined 5 kilometers from here. Yeah. Right? And honestly, our adoption of Aadhaar and of India Stack and of UPI, of e-signature, of this, it's nothing. Right? We are treating Aadhaar like a physical ID. We still take photocopies of Aadhaar and have people sign sideways and upside down, what have you. That's not what it was meant to be. We have an opportunity in this state, sitting here right here in Bangalore, to really showcase how a digital economy and a digital infrastructure has to be deployed. Government has to be the number one customer of this.
But
and
don't
believe
you think
me,
the government is
everybody from the startup ecosystem.
Digital in many of its services?
Well,
at the central level and at the state level. I mean, DigiLocker has taken off, UPI has taken off, we now have ONDC. So when you say government has to consume...
a lot of this is in very, very early stages. But the first mindset has been convert physical to digital. And sort of, literally it's like scanning a menu of a restaurant, right? A true digital experience is very, very different. I can see Ashwin smiling here in the front row, right? We have discussed this a few times. The thing is, the startup ecosystem has the ability and the expertise to truly help the government solve the problems that the government needs to solve. Right? We are seeing here, coming and asking for what we want from the government. The only thing we want from the government is an opportunity to play a role in serving the citizens of this state. Right? And I think any startup ecosystem, whether it's in the EV space, whether it's in the commerce space, mobility, whether it's in banking space, Chaitra is solving problems to bring women into the financial ecosystem, right? Financial inclusion. That's a core priority sector mandate, whether it's in the finance ministry, whether it's in the government, whether it's in the state government. Startups are the ones solving these problems, right? If government starts collaborating with the startups, we don't need any SOPs, right? We just need government to give us an opportunity and a platform to showcase what can be done. And a lot of it happened during COVID. Right, one of our companies, MyGate, built the pass for this. They worked for 96 hours non-stop and built that system, right? A lot of companies have provided healthcare services, have provided new age expertise. So the expertise is there, and I think we're missing, it's like ships passing in the dark, we're missing this golden opportunity to, and as Ganesh said, right, startups, 1% or 2% of our revenues from government. In most countries, it should be 30%. So it's an absolute win-win, right? If a government came in and said, if it's a Karnataka-based startup, we are going to provide a platform for you to try out all your services maybe in a sandbox initially and subsequently to scale it up. I think every startup would come and incorporate in Karnataka.
No, but I'll tell you the challenge with, depending on government for revenues. And, the IT industry has had a terrible experience with it. They say that, we do great landmark projects for the government, but when it comes to payments, we have to struggle. It's not the same as working for the private sector. So is
Chandra,
it really a bright idea to, seek the government as your customer when you don't have clarity on whether your money will come through?
I am assuming here that the government will figure out the right way to work with all its partners, not vendors, right? And partner together to solve the problems that we have to solve together in this country, right? And as a part of that, yes, there has to be fair value exchange. Startups can do pilots perhaps for free, but it ultimately has to lead to fair compensation and in a structured manner. And that will be part of the solution that has to be done. It's not just the platform, but it's also part of give and take.
See, there is already a preferential market access mechanism, that policy that the government has come up with. Now the question is that, so the intent is there, the government understands it, they see the need. Many of these problems, including infrastructure problem, can be solved if you involve startup and to be able to solve it. The question is, we have to really get down to translating it so that she is able to actually participate and get that. Obviously, it should not be based on only price, level 1. Okay. It can't take 6 months, 9 months to evaluate. 3, payments is a very, very, very major challenge with government, and we have also suffered in our startups with the payment delays that take place. All of that need to be comprehensively addressed. The good part is the appreciation is there. The bad part is we have to see actually in the result at the end of the day.
Got it.
Can I add 2 points
Chaitra,
to this one?
Yeah.
I think building on what both Sanjay and Ganesh are saying, one of the core things that we do, and where we have found resonance with a lot of people that we talk to, is this whole, so we do financial wellness, right? Personal finance management. There is an entire generation of government employees who are going to be retiring without pensions, without retirals. Now, there is a massive opportunity that fintech players can work with them to help them manage their post-retirement money situations. If there is a scope for that, we would love to work with the government, right? That's one thing. Second, which is a completely unrelated thing, I didn't bring it up earlier because I thought that the purview of this discussion is state government, but whether it's state or central, this whole digital India thing that Sanjay was talking about, the last mile of delivery has just not happened. The amount of time that I, as a founder, we are 3 co-founders. Each one of us spends in putting seal and stamp and signature on document after document after document. It is just mind-blowingly insane. And the amount of money we pay to Dunzo, courier services, delivery, it's
At least you're helping another startup, Chaitra. So
sure. But I'm a seed stage company. No, I mean, it's the time and the effort. Like, we've had to hire a person just for this. And in the first few years as a company, right, there is hardly, like, if there can be some relaxation made around this whole, the need to have a company secretary and a chartered accountant, like, we would have saved lakhs of rupees. We could have increased
that
our
is a separate
runway by
nightmare on its own. Or
You don't
on its
have
own.
a
This-
CA and taxation.
Yeah.
Few years down the line, it might turn into.
No,
a
I think
different-
like what Sanjay mentioned, whether it is M-Aadhaar initiative that can come up, or facial recognition to be able to do that, or digitally verifiable documents so that you don't have to put seal, signature, and everything. So nobody's, when you sign 300 pages every page, nobody is going to check the authenticity of the signature. But everybody goes through the same motion to be able to.
And oh, by the way, a tree gives you 80,000 sheets of paper. You take that 300, before you know it, every day we are consuming tree after tree after tree, and then we are complaining about how hot it is, we don't have water, we need to solve our environmental
No, but
problems,
Sanjay,
etc.
the
These
new
are all
initiatives,
intertwined.
is the new initiatives happening on M-Aadhaar, or you know this better because you have been one of the core team members. Is that happening? What she's asking for, will it happen that you have a digitally verifiable thing which is automatically gets done? Is that
No, what I'm saying is we have built the infrastructure. You mentioned earlier, it's the envy of the world. People are coming, governments are coming from all over saying, how do we deploy this in our country? We define this whole thing here, and we are
not-
barely using it.
Vivek, is that a top of mind issue for you?
On the last mile.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
But I don't think this is something that a state government can solve
Yeah,
for.
probably. I think there are a few things definitely state government can also step in and say that, okay, like Sanjay was mentioning, probably no photocopy of another, right? As in, which is already digital, etc. But I think there are far more problems, mostly around what Ganesh was saying, making the city livable. Otherwise, it becomes almost impossible, right? We all know that if the way this continues, probably 5 or 10 years, this won't be the most hottest place for startups or anything of that sort, right? So, infrastructure is first, then comes a lot of the other things. Yeah.
Right. I also wanted to get your thoughts when we are talking ease of doing business. One thing that comes within the ambit of the state is, how they treat ride aggregators. And I think it's been a nightmare for the likes of Rapido and the others. Yeah. What can the government do better? Or is this a problem across states? Because regulation usually kind of follows innovation.
So I'll tell you a very quick story on how we started. We wanted to rent motorcycles back in 2014. It took us 2 years to get a proper license. While there is an act where there's a rule on how it has to be done, etc., to just get them to execute this, it took us 2 years. And not just 2 years, we went to Rajasthan. Jaipur government welcomed us, as in Jaipur welcomed us to do rentals. Then probably we used one of the medias to say that Bangalore-based startup is going to start in Jaipur first. Then we got a call from transport department saying that we will also give this.
So the media helped you in this.
Yeah. In one of its instances, it did help.
one of the rare instances?
I think it was Moneycontrol or something like that.
No, but
Thank you.
But going back to this point, right? So, see, we were talking about transportation. Ganesh was saying that how can, if I get into a car or anything of that sort, how can I get to a particular destination within a particular point of time, right? So it's just not about making roads or flyovers or that's not the solution, right? As in, just great roads won't solve problem. You'll have great roads, but you'll be stuck in traffic. So we're talking about public transport. If the second you talk about public transport takes time for it to cover the whole of city. Then first mile, last mile becomes very key. And government can't, at least today government is not solving first mile, last mile. That's where startups came in. As in like us, we were solving for first mile, last mile, where 30% of the rides were starting for us in a metro station, either going to first mile or last mile. But we had to really fight for getting space at near a metro station, right? The only thing we wanted was integrated public transport where there is space for the first mile and last mile operators to park their vehicles. That's it, right? But it was not easy, right? It was not planned for, and it was auctioned at crazy prices. We paid. So thanks for our funding and other things, we were able to pay for it. But so these are the problems we are talking about, right? When we talk about how can government make city livable, startups can actually come up with very innovative ways of solving this. All they need is some kind of
in regulation.
Yeah, most of the times facilitate or cooperate and don't stop it, right? So today, most of the times you just ban, right? As in, you just stop. Overnight, you see that, okay, this has to be stopped. Probably a dialogue would be helpful to clearly understand what are the motives, what are the problems that government is looking at, why do they want to ban this, to everything, right? So most of the times, at least in mobility and transport, what we see is most of the shocks come in, right? As in, and always everyone is on edge. As in, you would think of bike taxi or anyone is always on the edge. But I think all of these startups can play a very important role in solving for first mile, last mile, or enabling public transport, or working closely with the government. So a more planned approach where startups and the government can actually sort out a plan would be super helpful, as in integrating. So we're talking about digital. So today, why doesn't someone take a bus? Because there is no idea, and you have no idea on when a bus is going to come from somewhere to somewhere. Recently, we are seeing some Google integrations, but it's a very simple data point that you can solve for, right? IoT in a bus. Some startup would be happy to push this and can also integrate with first mile, last mile, etc. All of that, right? So a lot of magic can happen if governments and startups can actually work together on solving very important issues like infrastructure, transportation, mobility, and also removing a lot of personal vehicles from off the road, right? Because you make great roads, great flyovers, and then you'll have a lot of traffic, but Ganesh will still be stuck on the road, right? So he still can't cross Silk Board or Bengaluru Junction unless we solve on this aspect of thinking and solving together.
So Chandra, actually during the Aadhaar days, right, we did a hackathon with the Rajasthan government. And the first prize was a 25 lakh rupee contract to deploy your solution with the government, right? So it was not a question of saying, okay, yours is the best product, but actually we will see it run at scale and in action, right? Yeah. And I think that's the thing where we can certainly collaborate between the startup ecosystem and the government and actually address the issues that the government wants and needs to see addressed.
Right. Ganesh, last year, I think when the floods happened, we saw all these millionaire bungalows and all go down, and, that Divyashri and, I don't know, unicorn founders were traveling on bullock carts or something like that. So, tractors. So, there was some noise then that, will Bengaluru continue to be India's Silicon Valley? And then, founders from Delhi NCR started making noise. Mumbai has been making a lot of noise in the last 6 months. They've formed their own association. Do you think Bengaluru has what it takes to still be the startup capital of the country? If yes, why? If no, why?
Yeah, I think absolutely Bangalore has got in it. It's not, people are not going to go away to Delhi or any other place. That is not the issue at all.
I think, like Ganesh said, we'll all cry, but we'll be here.
Okay, right? But no, the point is not that. I'm not even comparing with Delhi and Mumbai. Delhi and Mumbai are like brothers. It's like saying I got more marks than my brother, so I go and celebrate. I mean, that doesn't make me happy. Okay, right? So, by any standards, whether it is the fifth largest ecosystem in the startup ecosystem, startup city in the world, or India Innovation Index of Niti Aayog rating Bangalore as number one, we have many number ones. Okay, right? Now we have talked about all the challenges it reaches. Bengaluru, it's crazy. I mean, I've never seen where in a developed world you will go underwater and you will use boats to be able to do it in a million things. I mean, all that is very, very sad. But I don't think we are going to lose our spot. There are enough very strong things going for Bangalore, and including government across parties are doing. If you take, for example, the AI Research Center. The first AI Research Center, Art Camp at IISc, is in Bangalore. One of the very first initiatives. We are the second largest AI population for a city in Bangalore. So whether it's ChatGPT, regenerative AI, whatever you want to create center of excellence, the opportunities in Bangalore. You are not going to get that in Delhi and Bombay. It is here that we are going to do it. But we have to really, really work. Or take C-Camp, for example. So the number of initiatives that we have with central government and state government and the funding that is there, the talent that we have here, our ability to create the centers of excellence and actually marry startup, IP, commercial asset, all of it is unprecedented. Okay, right? We owe it to ourselves, all of us, that we actually utilize it and translate it. And just not bothered about Delhi, Mumbai and all of that stuff. If they do well, good for them. I will actually compliment and support and do everything required to be able to lend them to be able to go. It's like just you're helping your sister or brother do better than you in your life. Okay, right? That's not the competition at all. But we have to really get down to solving. And from Bengaluru to Ijipura flyover, I don't know, last 10 years I've been seeing it being built. Okay, right? You can't have a
This is
situation
that
where...
Stonehenge.
yeah. So, no. So you can't have a situation where you say, I will do Chandrayaan, I will do cutting edge research, I am 5th largest in the world, and my flat will get my villa will be underwater, or one particular thing to connect two of the startups' biggest areas, Indiranagar and Koramangala Club. 8 years it is still going on. And you are talking about bullet train. I mean, somewhere across parties, cutting across people, including startup, you have to say, man, this is ridiculous to have this kind of infrastructure and keep on talking about it that is there. That I think we need to do. But we are not going to lose it because so many good things are going for us. The talent, the weather, the culture, the IASC, and actual funding that has gone in. Now, 250 crores, 300 crores gone into art camp from central government and state government. Yeah. So the intent is there. So enough and more money is there, and people are doing it. And including private sector funds, people like Chris Gopalakrishnan and others have donated to various centers of excellence. So all of that is happening. So but we really need to get together to solve it.
Right. Sanjay, moving from between Bengaluru, Mumbai, Delhi, how are we going to grow this startup ecosystem beyond Bengaluru? I mean, beyond Bengaluru has been a big, theme. Now you have the Bengaluru-Mysuru Expressway. But, do you see that happening, or are we going to be in Bengaluru because this is the talent hub and tech talent is here and so on?
Yeah, so I think, by the way, we invest across the country, right? So I don't mind if it's Delhi or Mumbai. I would love for it to be Bangalore as the key hub here.
You have to show some loyalty.
Right? Yeah. So, I have my loyalty to the opportunity. But to answer your question, right, I think there will be pockets here, right? For example, Udupi has this huge pocket of gaming because of RoboSoft and things like that, right? But if I was to look at it as an entrepreneur, and as an entrepreneur, I can't take a chance on my own startup, right? So in some ways, why would I want to take a chance, right? So the most important ingredient for startup success is people, right? And as it is, it's hard enough convincing somebody to leave this, high-paying job from a Ganesh startup and come and work at a, seed-funded startup that we have recently backed. In addition, if I say, okay, and you got to move from something to some other city and stuff like that, it's impossible, right? So I think entrepreneurs need to always look at de-risking at all times. And so in many cases, it will end up being that regardless of what the cost of people is and things like that, first thing is there has to be access to the talent, right? And I think Bangalore has got that in droves, right? Now, there are others coming after us with a lot of other, like if I look at how Telangana markets itself, etc. Yeah. So, unlike Ganesh, I am concerned that we are going to lose our edge over a period of time if we don't address the fundamental issue of saying you should be able to reach your office, right? If you do the math here, if everybody is losing 2 hours a day, reaching their offices, which should have been 15 minutes each way, at some point people will get frustrated, right? What has worked well, inadvertently, ironically due to COVID, is people have gotten used to this work from anywhere, do 3 days in the office or 2 days in the office and the rest from home, etc. So that has helped a little bit, but we have to address these physical infrastructure issues very shortly.
I have a slight different addition to this. The Beyond Bengaluru initiative of creating clusters, whether it's the coastal cluster in Mangalore area, or South Karnataka cluster, or North Karnataka cluster, Hubli, Dharwad, or Mysore. I think that is one good solution even to solve some of the problems. But like Sanjay said, we have to create social infrastructure there. Yeah. You can't just have only IT companies there or gaming companies there, but not have jobs for the spouses, not for good education and all of that stuff. But I think starting Beyond Bengaluru initiative...
Third Wave Coffee also has to set up. Sorry? I said Third Wave Coffee also
has to set up. No, the initiatives of Beyond Bengaluru and these 3 clusters, I think should help us to be able to do that. But again, it's in thought, it's an idea, it's in that. But we need to really put social infrastructure also there so that people are able to actually move. Right. Sorry to
Chandra, one small point on that, is also things like manufacturing, for example, right? IoT is becoming such a core part of it. This, so there could be areas of expertise in these clusters, which can make maybe the companies based in Bangalore, but there's a lot of employment creation for startups in these smaller towns as well.
Right. Chaitra, if I look at the previous generation of entrepreneurs in Bengaluru, right, and all of them are like first-time billionaires and millionaires, whether it's the founders of Infosys, Biocon's Kiran, and others, they've been more engaged in civil society, in, giving back to Bengaluru, whether it's being part of, committees with the government, whether it's, setting up centers. But we don't see that happening much with the current generation of founders. And I don't mean seed-safe startups, but even those who are slightly more established. I mean, they are happy to complain on Twitter, but are they actually doing something on the ground? Why are they not as engaged as the previous generation of Bengaluru's entrepreneurs and CXOs and executives? And there are many here in the room as well.
I think I partly disagree with this statement. And the reason I disagree with it, but I partly agree also, right? And let me touch upon the part that I agree. I think the first
disagree because your entrepreneur friends might take offense.
No. I'll substantiate it. I've seen the contributions happen firsthand, but them not reaching the last mile or the full delivery, right? But the first generation of entrepreneurs, like the Infosys, the Biocons of the world, I think they are a different generation. They are more in tune with, they know how to deal with the government. They seem to know how to deal with the bureaucracy. Honestly, we don't. I mean, Vivek, correct me if I'm wrong. I have no experience dealing with the government. I have no experience dealing with the bureaucracy. So I don't know how to participate. Partly it's a little bit of a knowledge problem. But where it got bridged and breached, right, was during the early days of COVID. Me, my husband, a bunch of my entrepreneur friends, like practically every entrepreneur friend that I knew, was working harder than we had worked during our, I was transitioning between startups. I had left Simple and I was just before it started Salt, so I had free time. And I was working 16, 18-hour days volunteering for COVID during that time. But where the initiative stopped and where I dropped off, where I saw a lot of people dropping off, was when these projects, things were being built, like digital services were being built. But when they reached the last mile, somehow the lobby took over. There is a lobby that knows how to work with the government. There is a lobby that knows how to win government contracts. So when these projects reached that point, the lobbies came in and they took over, and everybody who participated sincerely, not just founders, but even employees, right, engineers, they got so disheartened, and it was heartbreaking for me to watch their work go to nothing after 2-3 months of intense hard work and effort, because then suddenly the service providers ended up being the ones who had always been, they had always delivered to the government. So I feel somewhere this generation is less tolerant towards those inefficiencies, and once you get, disappointed at that level after putting in so much effort, then obviously there is a barrier to go back.
Got it. Very, very interesting points. I'd love to extend this session, but I'm afraid we're, out of time. But a huge round of applause for Vivek, Ganesh, Sanjay, and Chaitra. Very pertinent points on expectations and what the government can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chandra, please give a token of appreciation to all our panelists, please. Chandra, you can stay back on the stage. We have more work for you. So before we move on, I would like to remind all our viewers, we are live on Moneycontrol's YouTube channel, Facebook, and Twitter pages. And please do not forget to tweet with the hashtag #MCPolicyNext. The sprawling city of Bengaluru has seen its fair share of urban and IT growth, but it has also resulted in the creation of a host of urban issues for several years now, ranging from traffic congestion to environmental degradation. However, there is hope on the horizon as the city looks to reboot and tackle its urban mess head-on. But is it the right time to press the reboot button? We'll find out. Over to you, Chandra.
Thank you so much for that, Meghna. I'd love to invite the speakers for the session. Press Reboot, Resolving Bengaluru's Urban Mess. Revati Ashok, the CEO and Managing Trustee of Bangalore Political Action Committee. Ashwin Mahesh, Urban Planner and Head AAP Manifesto Committee, Karnataka. R.K. Mishra, the Co-Chairman of Assocham, Karnataka and Co-Founder Yulu. Tara Krishnaswamy, Co-Founder Citizens for Bengaluru. And V. Ravichandar, Urban Planner and Honorary Director, Bengaluru International Center. Huge round of applause for all our speakers. It's good to have all of you on stage, and I think all of you are also the best of friends who've debated Bengaluru's infrastructure, irrespective of whether there are elections or not.
Fellow travelers for decades.
Okay. So,
and lots of patience required.
Okay.
With very little output.
Right. The previous panel, one recurring theme that really came out from startups, from founders, from investors, was the quality of living in Bengaluru, the infrastructure. I think Ganesh feels so strongly about Bellandur and that flyover which is never getting completed. Why is Bengaluru, we seem to be so grand on ideas but weak on execution, and this seems to happen, across successive governments. You have a number metro, but barely, few kilometers covered, and it doesn't cover the important corridors. You have just 6,000 buses as opposed to 12,000 buses that the city needs. According to some TomTom index, we're the second most congested city in the world. So why doesn't Bengaluru get its infrastructure right? Maybe I'll ask Revati to start and the others can chime in.
Thank you for inviting me, Chandra. I think it's a real travesty. All the points that you have mentioned is truly correct. We've been talking about infrastructure. We add our number of private vehicles have gone up from 55 lakhs to cross 1 crore over the decade. And you see what kind of public transport that we have added. Look at the number of kilometers of road that we have added. But we don't add mobility infrastructure for the road. So what will people do? They will congest it. In 1 year alone, we have added more than 257,000 vehicles in 1 year. And contrast that with bus transport, where the last 7 years, we have remained at 6,700 buses, out of which 1,000 are not operational. They're not operational because some of them don't work and they need repairs. And we are told during COVID, we didn't have maintenance, so they're not working. How hard is it to get them working? And then next we hear we don't have drivers because during COVID, some of them retired and some of them, sadly passed away. And we have not replaced drivers. This is fundamental. You can do metro. You can announce all the great things. You can announce bullet trains. You can go to Mysore in 1.5 hours. But if you can't have people moving in the city comfortably, you cannot add 10,000 buses. How hard is it? Why is it so difficult? So the will has to be there. You have to put the citizen at the center of delivering these services. You have to assume that I'm providing a service. You ask the BMTC chairperson, we hear that, we are not making profits, so we cannot add more buses. We went to the Chief Minister's secretary, and we hear the same thing. We went to Urban Secretary, same thing. So unless we have the will to add public transport, you're just going to choke more and more. And then we complain that peak hour traffic, we don't even do 10 kilometers an hour. And people are saying it is not even 10 kilometers is being kind to the government. It's actually, during peak time, it could be even 4 kilometers an hour.
Why do you think Bengaluru is lacking, Aishwarya?
This is a social and political question. It's not a technical and managerial thing. That we think that by adding roads, by adding buses and all of those kinds of things, we're going to get to a solution. We're only deluding ourselves. The real problem is what I would call deliberate incompetence. Deliberate incompetence. They don't want to do the right thing. Let's start from that. It's maybe impolite to say that in some things, but that's the real thing. There is a law. The law says this is how a planning organization for the city should be set up. The government doesn't want to do it. Now then you say, well, how are we going to build infrastructure if there isn't a plan for how the infrastructure should be? Well, the government is not worried about that. They don't want to do that either.
Yes.
Then you say, well, if there is no infrastructure for mobility, how am I going to get from my house to my place of work? The government is not bothered about that also. They don't want you to do that either. Then you say, if I don't get from my work to my house to my workplace, so many other things will be difficult. That's okay. The government doesn't want you to do those things either. So again and again and again, there is a political reality that you'll keep running up against. And that is that the government doesn't want many of the things that you and I want. First, we have to accept that. We can't assume that the government wants what we want, and therefore we are all sitting here debating how to get it done. That's not the reality. If the government wants what we want, if the government wants what we want, first let them appoint a planning organization. It's in the law. It's not Ashwin's request or the Tara's request or anybody's request. It's in the law. Why don't you do what's in the law? And this is the real issue. Today, if the government plans this Sankey Road thing, many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with this thing. Suddenly they'll say, we want to build a flyover. It's like one Tughlaq kind of project, right? I want to go and see America. Why? Don't I need to see America? It's that kind of answer. So why do you want to build this flyover? Because we want to decongest this area. Who has told you that it will decongest this area? Well, nobody, but we want to decongest it anyway. Have you talked to any transport planners? No. We don't want to talk to any transport planners because they will tell us that this is not the way to decongest the area. Therefore, we don't want to talk to transport planners. So this is what I mean by saying deliberate incompetence. Projects are thrown up by some nonsensical process. You should not mistake policy with intent. That was one thing that I noticed with the earlier conversation. You kept saying intent is there. Just because a policy exists doesn't mean it's intent. Intent is demonstrated. When somebody moves on a policy, then you can say they have intent. Just writing down a policy doesn't really make any. I've written enough policies in the government to know that these things don't reflect intent. I feel the real challenge is that too many of us believe that these are technical and managerial problems, and that tweaks around the edges of those problems can solve the challenges that we face. It's not going to happen.
Right.
Until we have governments that are attentive to the largest problems that the majority of the people face and are willing to invest in them properly. The largest problems that the majority of the people face are that public education is grossly underfunded and that public health is grossly underfunded. These are the largest problems. We think about traffic, we think about issues that we face at a civic level, but I assure you, these are not the largest problem. The largest problem is that we are not giving the young people of our state the capacity to be productive in life and to build autonomous lives for themselves based on that productivity. Instead, we keep them in. Most parties, when they say they are pro-poor, what they mean is that they are pro-poverty. That is essentially, that's why they've been pro-poor all these years.
Mr. Ravichandran, would you like to add?
Yeah. So, the thing is, from the previous panel, if you think Ganesha and others, Sanjay, are having a problem, just spare a thought for the underprivileged. It's a lot worse. I think that's the first thing I'd like to make. I would agree with what Ashwin and Revati have said. Revati took the example of mobility. The point is things are going to get much worse because I don't think we have a plan in place on how to go about this. Just take one thing on governance. Governance is not sexy, but unless you have the multiple agencies that exist in Bangalore working in tandem for outcomes, you're not going to fix it. We don't have an outcome-oriented thinking in government across the board. Everything is this project, 4,000 crores, that project, 3,000, this flyover here. and some problem there, one point solution. We just don't have a thing in terms of how are we going to get the end outcome. We don't have that thinking. She spoke about execution. We have a huge execution deficit. I mean, 5 kilometers of metro per year over the last 15 years. Come on, we are talking about being this greatest city and all that stuff. Where is it coming from, this greatness? 5 kilometers per year is our track record. So it's pathetic. She's talking about 6,000 buses. I mean, we have cried ourselves hoarse. Double the buses, half the fares, all kinds of stuff. Nothing has happened. Because nobody is really applying their mind as to what is the larger problem to fix. The other thing I'll just also quickly mention, if we really need to fix this place, and taking off something on, he mentioned about health and education, I believe if governments embrace the idea of what I would call a vulnerability framework to fix the place, you know, not the one size fits all. In different situations, different people are vulnerable. So on the road, it's the pedestrian. In transport, it would be the bus goer. When it comes to flooding, which is epsilon and the like, it is the low-lying areas which are vulnerable. When it comes to health, people living by the stormwater drains and where the landfill goes are vulnerable. I personally think if governments embraced that we will make the city work for the vulnerable, it will automatically work for the rest. The reality today is that does not exist as an attitude in government. There's a desire to announce projects because they have mastered the art of taking money out of projects. It is an art form. Art, science, whatever you want to call it, it's a reality. So, therefore, you have Bogota with 10 million city works. They don't have a single flyover. Not a single flyover. There's a public transport that works. Therefore, the problem here is we love projects. We love Bangalore as a cash cow. And unless that changes, I don't see much hope. So you started on hope, but I'm not so hopeful.
Pessimism on the left side. Let me see what Mr. Mishra and Tara have to say. I mean, what explains that attitude? Because, you know, Bengaluru is clearly the cash cow. But I think all of you have cried yourselves hoarse that, you know, it pretty much gets a raw deal when it comes to infra and civic amenities. But what explains this apathy from the government?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. And I mean, a lot of wisdom has been shared already. I tend to agree with the opening and closing statement of Ashwin. I'll leave out the rest.
Which is deliberate incompetence.
No. His opening statement was that it's a socio-political issue, not a civic issue. Okay. And he closed that way too. I agree with that. I think in a democracy, for us to be successful, whether we are talking about Bengaluru city infrastructure, or whether we are talking about the economy, or whether we are talking about education and health, the who and the how matter. Democracy is due process. Outcomes are not guaranteed. You can end up electing a dictator. That can very well happen in a democracy. But the fact that there is due process for the elections, that it is supposed to be free and fair, that everyone has an equal vote, that is guaranteed. If we look at Bengaluru, the who and the how are completely broken. Every time a new government assumes office, the first thing they do is to invite the who's who of Bengaluru to consult on how to build Bengaluru. That would be people who earn hundreds of crores, if not thousands of crores a year. I have no problem. I've been in the corporate sector all my life, except recently I've retired as a technologist. So I love money. That's not the problem. The problem is that, almost 40% of our population is migrant population in Bengaluru. They work in the informal sector. 50% are women, many of whom work in the informal sector. A good 20-25% are children. And then you have senior citizens. And then we have 2,000 slums in Bengaluru. More than a third of Bengaluru population lives in slums. You cannot build a city that is not everyday livable for all without consulting them. Flyovers and buses are an issue for us, but that's also because we have an option. Even though we have only 6,000 buses, it hasn't prevented any of us from getting access to the Four Seasons. But there is a lot of people, according to the survey, according to IHS, according to so many other surveying organizations, 50% of slum dwellers generationally never leave slums. Others leave slums to go to other slums in other cities. So we don't have forward progress, right? We are not upwardly mobile. The rich do get richer. Right? It's not that the poor necessarily get poorer, but they don't escape that cycle. But in building this city,
We're not looking at whether it's usable for children. We're not looking at what it takes for slum dwellers to get to that, that 10, 15, 20 kilometers daily they need to traverse to go to work. How are they going to get to work? We have 1,000 people entering the city every day. Where do they live? We have no idea. And this is Citizens for Bengaluru in 2017. We held a thing in Freedom Park it's called Beku Beda Sante, to come up with the Citizens Manifesto just before the 2018 elections. And while so many groups of people, we had invited diverse groups of people, were asking for very similar things to what this room would ask for, there were a set of slum kids who were painting what they wanted. And there was media as part of this exercise, thousands of people. And the media would go from person to person asking, Nimigan Beku, what do you want, right? And, people would say, I want pavements, I want non-motorized transport, I want a climate change manifesto, I want, clean air and so forth. And these set of slum kids said, Namage mane beko. Very simple. We want housing. They don't have houses. Nobody here would think of that as the biggest problem plaguing Bengaluru. We are blind to it, right? So we are not going to solve the infrastructure problems of Bengaluru by looking at it through extremely privileged eyes only. It is important to include all eyes. And until the planning cycle, the implementation cycle, the public consultation cycle involves all kinds of people to build an inclusive city, that infrastructure, even from a conception perspective, is going to be inadequate. And so long as you can't even conceive of the solution to the problem, you certainly ain't going to build it.
Right. So, Mishra?
So the benefit of speaking the end is that you're wiser by listening to all your fellow participants. I think I'm not going to dwell on the problem. Because everybody else has spoken the problem. So
You're going to give us the glass half
hopefully.
full. Yeah.
I don't think I have a solution, but I know maybe the path to solution and how it should be done. And many of us have been in several, discussions in the committees and reports and everything. And we thought of the solution. Different governments tried to implement in parts. First of all, there's a lot not right about Bangalore. But there is a lot more which is very right about Bangalore. And that's why most of us continue to be in Bangalore. Only thing is we want more. We certainly want much more. And we have the voice to speak. And we have forums where we are heard. Hence we speak. Traffic is, of course, a major issue. But the only city where I have missed my flight twice is not Bangalore. It's Mumbai. I stayed in a hotel. I don't want to name the hotel. I don't want to be called, the rich or whatever. Somewhere in South Mumbai, near Marine Drive, and I drove. I had 2.5 hours. Still, I missed the flight. And that's not today. It was like 5-6 years ago. So Bangalore has a lot of problems, but let me just tell you what Bangalore has good. And of course, Tara and people like Tara, Bangalore still has the least percentage of slums in the country. Bangalore is the richest per capita in the country. Bangalore has India's, I think, maybe, nowhere else in India you have around 75 or maybe no. Around 80 square kilometer area where you have perfect roads and footpaths, where you can walk from Trinity Junction all the way to Majestic without coming on the road. So 39 smart city roads, 12 tender shore roads, and Church Street and Commercial Street, where you can happily walk without worrying about, and I'm not saying about the weather because that's not our government's doing, that is God's doing. I think last 10-15 years, all of us sitting here and in the room and media, we have really hard put pressure on the government. Of course, we are, I think, one of the most corrupt states, and I openly say it because I know it from very close quarters. One of the most corrupt states in the country is Karnataka, and corruption is from the bottom to the top. So they say 40% this government, some other government could be 35, some other could be 65. And this is, I hear because I talk to contractors who actually pay the money. I talk to engineers who monitor them. and I talk to the officers, senior most officers. So it is a fact. Why it is, how it is also very fact. Shekhar Gupta did a program, why Karnataka is the most corrupt state in the country. I think last 25 years, no government has lasted 5 years. And if you are going to last only 1.5 years or 2 years, and I think the Karnataka population and the people and voters of Karnataka are partly to blame. They do not give a clear mandate. Yogi has got very clear mandate for 5 years. I'm not saying that he is not corrupt or he is corrupt. What I'm saying, at least you know what you are to do in 5 years. Correct? If you are going to give a fractured mandate, I think I'm talking about this because it's an election panel, correct? You are doing before election. If you continue to give mandate like what Mr. Shastri and other gentlemen mentioned, I mean, it may sound very, Karnataka is very, forthcoming, and I think Karnataka is most caste-driven, most corrupt, and most region-driven state. Most other states have given up on regional parties who fundamentally have not been able to create a manifesto other than sticking to their caste and region and things like that. I'm not saying any particular party or anything, but Karnataka's biggest problem is political. And not knowing how many days, of course, now even if you win the election, you lose the government, correct? So that's a different matter. So I can talk about how many kilometers of metro because I sit in the committee advisor, but
what explains the apathy of agencies like your BBMP and others?
So BBMP and all are the manifestation of the corruption which this state and city and government represents. Do you think the BBMP commissioner can do anything which political boss? I'm sure there are some very brave officers. Earlier officers could talk to the politicians. Today they only listen to politicians. There are commissioners, Jacob Jerome's and all some other people who essentially were listened to when CM said. Today BBMP commissioner or BDA commissioners who don't know, BDA anyway, is bankrupt now because BDA is a real estate agency and they no more real estate to sell because only private guys are selling real estate now, correct? So BBMP commissioners and all that, just 1 minute. BBMP commissioners and all are essentially politically, when the elections come, they appoint a good person because they want to show some few good roads before the elections. And roads last only till the elections. So all these problems, we know only I said solution. What we should do. Do more of this. What we are trying to do. Do more of this. Have more people like Ashwin and Tara. Of course, Ashwin has become a political guy now. So I don't know whether he will be welcomed. But
And you're not?
No, I'm no longer a politician. I had a party and I left it after BJP came to power for saying there was no hope. So I said there's no point. So I left it in 2000 after Modi came. Yes.
I think Tara wants to add.
Quick comment that I wanted to say.
Let me conclude, Tara.
Okay.
So from that point of view, I think more of what we are doing, it is the wonderful city. And I don't compete with Delhi. I'm also investor and invest in several startups. We don't compete with Delhi and Mumbai. And people who say that Bangalore compete with Delhi and Mumbai don't understand. We compete with only place we compete with Silicon Valley. And this is not because Bangalore roads, it is because India's talent, which this city attracts. And the reason this city is in such a situation is because whole country's talent. So somebody when says, oh, why North Indians are here and all that. Please, Bangalore is Bangalore because whole country is attracted to Bangalore. Not because of road, but because of his culture, but because the willingness of the people to accept everybody. Why do you think there are 6 flights from Lucknow, 5 flights from Patna, and 3 from Bhubaneswar and Ranchi and everywhere? Why? Marriages don't happen here. It is the people whose kids work here, parents are coming and going and things like that. And that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
California is best. Why nobody goes to Montana? Correct? Because it's all white people. California, you hardly see any white people. So Bangalore also is vibrant, and by the way, Karnataka's economy is Bangalore. And I think politicians know very well, but they don't care. They only earn from Bangalore and they spend during the election.
Elsewhere.
Thank you.
Okay. My quick comment is, so Montana is also moose, and the other M is Moneycontrol, which is the kind of excitement that's generated before state elections. And we are talking about BBMP and, the state a government is not responsible for the BBMP. The BBMP is responsible for it. We have, issues of creeping centralization, but that apart, the third tier is supposed to be independent. But in the context of state elections, if you look at media, there's just a lot of wonderful energy that media generates by focusing on elections and getting people to vote and stressing on, emphasizing the importance of this whole festival of democracy. But then every time there's a legislative session, every time assembly convenes, state government can enact things that completely change the face of Bengaluru included. The Bangalore Act just got enacted, right? So, but we don't have this kind of drama that happens, right? So the enthusiasm for governance is not, we can't just blame the politicians for it. We are throwing a spotlight on elections like nothing else, and we refuse to throw that spotlight on governance. We refuse to follow what private member bills were tabled. We refuse to follow what legislations, were debated. If we had that kind of spotlight from people and media, perhaps there's more hope.
Okay. Revati, apart from the poor quality of infrastructure, is it also an issue of poor coordination among multiple agencies? For instance, we did a story recently about how at least 13 departments are involved in the enterprise of digging Bengaluru's roads.
Yeah, I think that's successive governments have not been able to solve it. And I think the previous panel spoke about using technology to do all of this. If there is a will, definitely it could be done. I think it's the question of use of technology and a proper workflow so that, a beautifully done road, which is so-called tender sure road, is not dug up within 3 days of that road being put up. So it is not difficult. So the question is, we call ourselves the technology capital, but we don't reach out to people for any of the technology support. We want to do it ourselves, or we want to have our own coterie of people who will want to do this. So unless the mindset changes and you bring in people, again, favorite topic of mobility, I disagree that mobility is only for the elite. That is precisely the problem that we have today, because we view mobility as something for the elite. My gardener had to give up a great job which he had at Yelahanka, and very senior official. He had to give it up because he was traveling 2 hours every day by bus, and the bus, he said, doesn't come on time. And the person there, and then he had to give up that job. People hold 3 or 4 jobs. And we must understand that mobility is a great economic equalizer. As long as we think mobility is an elitist concept, we are never going to solve the problem. For example, you have mobility. Why don't we put the citizen at the center of it? You have different categories of mobility. Our BMTC MD says we are not making profits. But why don't you have different tiers of mobility? Why don't you have people who are going by car? They are not going to move to buses unless they get the same level of freedom that they get by traveling in car, the same level of flexibility that they have, which means I must need information, I must not waste my time, I should have connectivity. If you provide all of that and reasonable comfort and hygiene and air condition, but suddenly we say, oh, that is elitist. But provide it for that tier of people. There will be enough people. And I again disagree with you, RK, that Mumbai doesn't move. I spend at least 30% of my time in Mumbai.
But to be fair, he said 5-6 years ago, not now.
No, but traffic really moves because they have different tiers of mobility for different tiers of people. So you can move irrespective of whether you have a maid who can come from Dahisar all the way to Churchgate without a problem. I used to travel by shared mobility 30 years ago when I started my career. We are still debating Contract Carriage Act today. Zipco started here. They had to close shop because government doesn't want to provide buses. Zipco was an app-based service which was providing bus service, but we didn't want to allow that. We had an electric mobility vehicle which started out in Bangalore, I don't want to name the name, could not make headway with our BMRCL, went to Hyderabad and open arms. They have had multiple stations at which they are providing last mile connectivity. It's impossible to work. And not this government, the previous government created a sandbox. We spoke about sandbox. It created a sandbox precisely for this reason, that startups can experiment and work with the government and start work. But it's just all dead. Unless you know somebody who's working closely with the government and then get some entry, that's all the way you can get it.
Right.
But why don't you use the sandbox?
Right. We have 2 minutes left. I'm going to get closing comments from Mr. Ravichandar and Ashwin. Are you hopeful at all that things will change for the better?
I have been in the space.
If we get a clear mandate, hopefully next week.
See, I've been in the space for 23 years, so obviously I'm a very, very optimistic, hopeful guy. Okay, though I'm self-confessed patron saint of lost causes. But that said, we will have a better tomorrow, but it requires political will, it will require administrative acumen, and it requires citizens to play their role. So all the three stakeholders have a role to play. So I am hopeful about the future. We could get there faster. It might be a bit slower, but obviously there is a better tomorrow.
But there's certainly a lot of citizenry from this panel, which is a good thing. Ashwin?
So I'll give you one more phrase like I did the last time, like deliberate
Ashwin, end on
incompetence.
an optimistic note, Ashwin.
No, it's a very optimistic note. We have scarcity and mediocrity. So therefore, from here we can go only up. But I want to close with one thing, which is what I started with. The problems that the city faces are not technical and managerial. They are social and political. Fundamentally, somewhere along the way, RK said, oh, Ashwin's now gone into politics. My question to all of you is, why are you not in politics? If the problem is political and you're not in that space, what is your contribution to the solution? It's a fair question to ask. I don't think, nobody goes around saying there's an engineering problem, but I'm choosing not to be an engineer. If it's an engineering problem, you choose to be an engineer. So in a sense, I feel politics is not so separate from what I call public problem solving. The overwhelming majority of the people who are paying a huge price for the social and political problems around us are not people like you and us. But until their lives get better in ways that they feel that they have a stake in the kinds of things that we are asking for, I don't think we can get the outcome that we want to. But over the last 10 years, I'll say this also, over the last 10 years, it has been possible to move the political needle, and it has been possible to bring every election to the point where there is now talk of education and healthcare, of power supply and water supply, and people are asking, what the hell are you doing? And I feel that is the optimism that we have to take forward.
Great.
Can I yeah, because he mentioned. So I think the reason I said about Ashwin, I wanted to provoke him. And he's a very dear old friend. That's your job, but I was doing. I think what Ashwin says is perfect because, see, again, and if you want to change Bangalore, I think more of you need to engage with your BBMP, which of course, hopefully, this government or maybe next government,
With that, go out and vote.
Will hopefully conduct BBMP elections because your MLA is not supposed to be
had
doing
it
that.
since 2020, and I think 2020 or something. Yeah.
So I think to the point, yes, we all need to be politically engaged, and we need to be administratively engaged. I think most of you sitting in this room, at least, have ability to know your nearest officer, your nearest engineer, your nearest politician. Please engage, and by engaging, you will get better. By complaining over champagne or rice wine in a hotel or in your room is not going to work. So that's my final.
Great.
Go out and vote and make the elephant dance.
Just 10 seconds for Tara.
Yeah, I wanted to say that as an activist, it's very, very optimistic because every day that you engage with people, you see small and incremental changes. It might not seem like much, but there's a lot of good stuff happening. We have board committees where citizens can engage with the administration and corporators of BBMP when they do come into existence, but till they existed too. And that's a huge change from before. That's a fundamental change, revolutionary change.
It's a very good takeaway from this session.
Yeah,
That
so I feel very optimistic.
Yeah, you must engage more instead of, as Mr. Mishra said, tweet or, complain over champagne. On that note, thank you all very much. Yeah.
Please give a token of appreciation to all our panelists, please. Thank you all. The next government definitely will have to rise from mediocrity and draw a detailed plan of action to resolve Bengaluru's woes. While moving on to our next session for the evening is Make in Karnataka. Can Karnataka continue to be among the top investment destinations of the country? In the next session, over to you, Chandra.
Right. Okay, sure. Okay, great. Thank you all very much. Very excited to introduce the next panel to you. This is about Make in Karnataka. Karnataka is a services powerhouse, but can we make a difference when it comes to manufacturing? Please welcome Mr. Rajeev Gowda, the national spokesperson of the Indian National Congress. We also have Mohandas Pai, former board member, Infosys and chairman RN Capital. B.V. Gopal Reddy, president, Federation of Karnataka Chambers of Commerce and Industry, that's FKCCI. And Arvind Meligeri, chairman and CEO of ACUS. We're also going to have Rituparna Chakrabarti, the co-founder and executive director, board team lead services, in just a bit. Right. Huge round of applause. Thank you very much. Great. So, Rituparna will be joining us in just a bit. But I was just going through some data and, amazing Karnataka's contribution to the national GDP. It's at third place, contributing 8.7%. Second largest in terms of GST collections after Maharashtra. Karnataka is already at the top when it comes to receiving FDI during the April 2021 to March 2022 period with 1.76 lakh crore in terms of investments. But where do we go from here? What will it take to make Karnataka a $1 trillion economy over the next decade? And can we really shift, the concentration that we have in services towards manufacturing and industry? That's something we are going to discuss. Mr. Pai, would you like to begin? What will it take? Are you optimistic about Karnataka's future when it comes to making in Karnataka, when it comes to making Karnataka a manufacturing hub?
Chandra, first of all, we need to understand the composition of Karnataka's economy. 66% is services
yeah.
and is the highest in the country. And I think the country is about 55-56%. For information, Gujarat is around 35%. So we are really an extraordinary state and very different from any other state. Agriculture makes up 14%, with 42% of the population dependent on it. And industry makes up, I think, about 19%. And we are the richest state in India with 3,05,000 per capita income in 21-22. I'm not seeing 22-23 figures, so Telangana keeps talking something, we'll see the data. So this is an extraordinary state, but we have to understand how the city is. About 60% of the GDP comes from Bangalore and its agglomeration. All right? If you remove Bangalore from Karnataka,
Rest of Karnataka has a GDP equal to India's GDP that year of 1,79,000 or something. Okay? So we're a very unique state. The south is well developed, the north is not developed. Now, if you look at industry too, we have to see what kind of industry is required for Karnataka. We need industry. I don't agree with Raghuram Raj and all that. This thing, India doesn't require industry, because you need industry. You need to create jobs. Now, we need different kind of industry in different areas. We need labor-intensive industry in the north, which has got surplus labor, land, and water. Yeah. We need high-tech industry in the south. We need service industry in the coastal areas, which are environmentally challenged. And we have to get all of them. So we need a strategy for that. Today, we are finding Bengaluru has got 5 lakh people working in the garment industry. And who are these people? All people from outside. They go to Jharkhand, get people from outside, put them in a hostel and pay them 10, 11,000 rupees and talk about it. Whereas why can't we shift that industry to north of Karnataka near Hubli Dharwad? So we need to have an agglomerate like Hubli Dharwad, which will create the impetus. We need to invest in urbanization. We need to have 200 cities, small towns where we put in money, and so that we can create a labor-intensive industries there where people from the neighboring villages can travel 5-6 kilometers and get jobs. So we have to have a very different strategy, and we have to incentivize labor. This country has been incentivizing capital. If you put up a 1 lakh crore refinery, you get 90,000 crores as subsidy because of the incentives. You set up a garment factory for 1,000 crores, 50,000 jobs, the labor inspector will harass you. We got policies which are anti-job creation. So to me, the most important thing for any state is job creation. We must create high-quality jobs for the young people. We are creating 12 lakh jobs per year in Karnataka. The data is there. 80% pays less than 25,000 rupees. I think Ritu can give you all the data. All right? So we have to change our tack. And Karnataka is not one state with a uniform development. North is different. The coast is different. The south is different. Bangalore is different. Right. So we have to have all this strategy. I think now a lot of discussions happen in the $1 trillion report with McKinsey. So a lot of data is there. Whichever government comes, hopefully, they'll invest in industry. We require industry. Let's be very clear about it. We have to have good industry and different kinds of industry.
Mr. Gowda, would you like to weigh in? Is this going to be one of the top priorities if the Congress were to come to power? Your manifesto, interestingly, also mentioned the importance of regional development, setting up industrial hubs in border areas. So if you'd like to weigh in on that.
Yeah, when, not if, but the Congress comes to power, which is next week, we will start to really, really implement many of the ideas that Mohandas Pai has just mentioned. We have, in the past, during the government led by Sri Siddaramaiah, come up with a variety of initiatives, many of which need to be revived and strengthened again. One crucial dimension is this business of spreading the activity to other regional centers. So we do have special portions in the manifesto which are focused on Bengaluru, which are focused on Hubli Dharwad, Belgaum, Kalburgi, because each region has its own strength, and that strength needs to be exploited and tapped. Similarly, one of the learnings from the COVID experience is that a lot of people can work from home, that a lot of people have migrated to Bangalore to work in the service sector. Instead, we need to provide them the kind of infrastructure and support that will allow them to have clusters of service sector focused facilities in Davangere, in Chitradurga, in Bagalkot, wherever they're coming from. And they'd find that they'd be able to do a very good job at their earnings would go for a longer distance. But fundamentally, there's a lot of support that you need actually from government. And that's something that that's something that we are very, very keen on taking forward and taking inputs and ideas. Ultimately, policy is continuity. In fact, I wanted to congratulate you for the theme of this panel, which is not a face-off or a debate, but actually a constructive discussion on how do we take the state forward, which is probably the need of the hour rather than divisive rhetoric amongst all of us. So when you think about what the government needs to do, right, supportive policies, ways to tap our innate, human capital. How do we turn that human capital into much more productive human capital, whether for higher, whether through higher education, whether through better vocational and skill-based development, whether through investment in linkages with industry, so that you have better internships and immersions and exposure. I mean, basically there's just so many missing gaps out there that need to be filled. And there's, of course, also a financial dimension, which is to nurture startups. We've been falling behind. Instead of being the startup capital, there are more startups in recent years in Maharashtra. Telangana is talking about, attracting a lot more startups.
Yeah.
Startups have been shutting down, and we need to go out there and do something to prevent those jobs and startups from being lost. So there are many, many, many interventions where you don't leave it to the markets, you don't leave it to venture capitalists. You basically step in there and help these companies, survive with the vicissitudes of their growing up.
You don't agree that Bengaluru has lost ground to other cities?
No. Last year we created 2 lakh jobs in technology. You ask her, she'll tell you. And all this, you keep writing about layoffs, 6,000, 7,000. We got 23 lakh people working in technology in Bangalore. 23 lakhs. Every year some 30, 40,000 will be laid off, hired. Everybody gets laid off. Most of them get job within this thing. I think the data is very clear, Chandra. Let's not downgrade Bangalore just because of political reasons. Oh, startups are going away. This is going away. That's not correct. Look at all $65 billion of capital
I'm
came
going
in.
to ask Mr. Gowda.
Mohandas, no one is downgrading Bangalore. We are pointing out that if anything like this is happening, it needs to be corrected. Take it in that spirit, okay?
Yeah, but
I'm
let's
going
talk
to
with
ask-
data.
Okay. Touching upon a theme that both of you concurred on, which is, going beyond Bengaluru. You said every region in Karnataka is different. It has its strengths. They need to be developed. And one entrepreneur who's done that is Mr. Arvind Meligeri, who set up a significant manufacturing unit in Belgaum. Mr. Meligeri, what has your own experience been? And can this be replicated in different parts of the state?
Look, Karnataka has a lot of capable people willing to work. We need to skill them, put them in a specific industry, right training, and that cannot happen in Bangalore. The manufacturing in Bangalore is a expensive affair. I left Bangalore for manufacturing took away in 2009, 2008 to set up in Belgavi a special economic zone. At that time, everybody told, including my investor, are you goddamn crazy? Where are you going? Go to Gujarat. Stay in Bangalore. Because how are you going to make it happen in Belgavi? I said, when I look at the aerospace industry, you got to look at 20, 30 years away. What will it be? Can Bangalore, no manufacturing industry globally is in New York, LA, Paris, London. They were there before they were. Today, there are none of them there. And it cannot have been Bangalore. We believe if you have to sustain in the long term, when you cannot pay $1 million, $2 million per acre and build a manufacturing facility, then put capital in there and make a return on the capital employed. There is no way it can happen. And you don't get people and you cannot retain the people. And you have to bring them where? Bring them from outside into the city. As Mohandas Pai said, put them in dorms. Then trouble starts. And it just boils over again and again. That model worked in China because they brought from hinterlands into the cities because and built them. And they had no way to fight, protest, do anything. In India, we are a democracy. We cannot do that. We cannot force people to do certain things certain way. And it needs to be done by law. And we have so many laws, just nightmare sometimes. Irrespective of which government it is, we got to streamline this law. Out of every unit we have in a special economic zone, we file 255 filings every year for one unit. I have like 32 units. Think about it, how much army of people I need to file this. And we know by default, there is something we are missing. And somebody can show up tomorrow morning and asking them, you did not file this day. We file monthly, same thing gets filed quarterly, same thing filed half yearly. So many things. So all I'm saying is streamline and we have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in the North Karnataka. We have built 3 clusters. Aerospace cluster in Belgavi, toy cluster in Koppal, and consumer durables in Hubli. And we attracted, today in Belgavi, we have 5,000 people working in the zone. Out of that, 3,000 people are contract laborers, come every day morning from their villages, from their home, into the zone, work and go back. Up to 30 kilometers away. They have their own transport system, they have to manage their own. We just pay them what it is. Even if we go up and down within the 9-month period or 12-month period, if they have 9 months of job, they're more than happy because remaining time they work in farm. The amount of money they make is so much more than they would have worked in any agricultural field. Just give a simple example. When we launched the Koppal Toy Cluster, we needed 1,000 people to start with. We had 15,000 people line up to take the job. 15,000 people. It won't happen in Bangalore. Never it will happen in Bangalore. All I'm saying is there are people out there, they're hungry to work. And these people today in agriculture, they make 3,000 rupees a month, which is like 1/4 of the minimum wage of the state. And we provide job at a minimum wage, their income even increased by 4x. Imagine economic impact of these people on the whole region. It's huge. Even if they work 3 months, they're more than happy because they made so much more money. So it's important to think beyond. Yes, is it painful? Yes, more painful than being in Bangalore. But it is end of the day, you're creating jobs and improving the lives of thousands of people. What better social impact you can make as an entrepreneur than being outside in these areas instead of bringing them here and putting them in a
round of applause for his excellent work, Frank.
And so what are you going to do to ensure more entrepreneurs move to the northern parts of the state?
Well, it's not just northern. See, it's about getting out of the Bangalore agglomeration. We've been putting in place more efforts. See, for example, in Kolar district in Narsapura, we've been able to attract and build a whole industrial zone. We've had Apple's contract manufacturers come in there. But in some ways, this is still very much just on the outskirts of Bangalore. So how do we take it further? That's really the question. And there we will listen, talk to people like Arvind Meligeri and get their insights and figure out how to, do region-specific industrial clusters.
Right.
Chandra, let me say this. Now, 1 minute.
Yeah.
Congress had the first labor-intensive industry policy in India. They did it. R.V. Deshpande did it. First electric vehicle policy. Didn't implement. Didn't put money behind it. You have a labor-intensive policy. You don't allocate money in the budget because you don't think jobs are important. But they have beautiful policies. Electric vehicle policy, the first. Ola has gone to Tamil Nadu. Ather has gone to Tamil Nadu. Everybody is going to Tamil Nadu. Because these guys don't understand that we have to incentivize them, get them jobs. They didn't give them land for Ola. You talk to Ola. They didn't give them land.
BJP was in power in the last 3 years.
Same,
Ola Ather went.
See, whether the Congress did that, BJP is not paid attention to that. I know it. We fought with the industry minister. Get Ola to Karnataka, please. Give them land. Give them in Kolar. Give them something. Subsidize them. R.V. Deshpande spent 65 crores to subsidize land for Toyota in Bidudi. If we had not done that, we wouldn't have had it. See, look at Tamil Nadu. They will call you with a thing for industry. Tamil Nadu knows how to get industry. How people just don't do it. They just sit on. Then they go abroad and say, we got 3 lakh crores, 5 lakh crores, 6 lakh crores. What do you look at him? You must incentivize people like him who are doing that. You ask him how difficult it is to get government support. He'll tell you. It's a nightmare. We have to implement policy. We have to focus on jobs in North Karnataka. What Rajeev said is correct, but we have to implement.
I'm going to Ritu and then I'll come back to Rajeev. Ritu, lot of focus on building beyond Bengaluru, but again, what are we going to do on the skilling side? Because as Mr. Pai said, 66% is services economy. So when it comes to skilling for manufacturing, finding talent there, how do we go about it? Is there a planned way of going about it?
I'll probably not let the last 85 minutes of trying to reach from Koramangala to here affect as much as my conversations here on about resurgence of Karnataka. But just to come to the point on skilling per se, it's important for me to kind of draw everyone's attention towards the 5 geographies of work, which essentially is going to, again, impact whatever we are talking about. And a lot of aspects of what's happening around the geographies of work at a macro aspect from an India perspective is applicable even for the state of Karnataka. For example, the sectoral geography of work, which is essentially what you're talking about. If you look at it, in the gross state domestic product, 66% of the contribution is still coming from services, and the balance, about another 11-12% comes from manufacturing, and the rest. So I guess, and from over the last 5 years, services has contributed to about 11-12% growth, and manufacturing about 6%. Now, we're talking about employment, and interestingly, the contribution of employment from manufacturing has been, in spite of all the talk that we hear about the manufacturing setup, is still quite low, which is almost less than 10%. The physical geography of work. I know every conversation around Karnataka, unfortunately, gets influenced by Bangalore. Yeah, I mean, what's happening in Bangalore, the talent shortages, the skill unavailability, the employability crisis. But I think if you look at the entire landscape of Karnataka, there is a huge inequitable distribution of the demand as well as the supply, by the way, which means that there is a clear north and south divide, even in case of Karnataka. So I think that's an issue that I saw when I came in. We need to really address that. We should not allow what's happening in Bangalore affect our choices in terms of what needs to be done in terms of distributing demand in an equitable manner. When I say demand, I'm talking about jobs and good quality jobs, formal jobs. The third element is enterprises. I think, again, it's the same point. Most of the enterprises today or organizations are very, very circled around 5-6 districts. The state is huge. It's mammoth. And if we do not take a structured approach in terms of having equitable, more districts which are attractive for job creation hubs, I don't think we will be able to solve the problem for a large cross-section of our youth in the state, which is still dependent on agriculture and income from agriculture. Interestingly, some of them, while they are not willing to move to Bangalore, some of these jobs are going to outsiders, but because at the moment the perceived incentive coming from agriculture is more than what probably they feel they gain from coming to Bangalore, which is absolutely fine, but they do deserve good quality jobs of dignity. And of course, the legislative one, which we just spoke about, I think Karnataka, thankfully, has been a little ahead of many of the states in terms of taking some steps around the labor laws. Like recently, there have been few announcements. But like you mentioned, we all live, one of the biggest showstoppers for organizations are the complex regulatory cholesterol, and Karnataka is no different. And finally, why I'm coming to skills at the last, the education or employability geography of work. Primarily, until and unless we fix the 4 geographies of work which I mentioned, just doing the last, which is the skilling bit, is also not enough. But in this area as well, there is a lot to be done because, like I said, just because of what's happening in Bangalore doesn't mean that it's representative of the needs and aspiration of the youth of the entire state. So there has to be a concerted effort in terms of skilling our youth. The national education policy needs to be leveraged by the state in terms of the kind of push and thrust that is being given in terms of degree-linked apprenticeship program, internships, the kind of centers of excellence that are being created within the states to kind of ensure that there is a diverse set of skills which are emerging. To be honest, and with due regards to the efforts put in by the government, the momentum that we see around us in terms of employment, again, Bangalore, it's honestly very little visible role that the government has played. And I'm not taking credit away from the intent, but I think on ground, a lot of effort has to now go in terms of creating skills. And if we want to make manufacturing, to be honest, we won't be able to create enough jobs without manufacturing stepping up. Completely agree, but even if you create the demand here, I'm not particularly sure that we have the local talent available with the right skill sets. And that's the reason you see such a huge surge of migrant labor coming into the state. because within the state, those skills are not available. So that's a very limited point. I don't know that answers your questions, but
right.
I try to summarize.
He wants to weigh in on the local skills.
Specifically skilling perspective and capability perspective, I want to highlight, look, from a Belgavi cluster, we are delivering to almost every aircraft in the world has a part going from Belgavi. Okay? We do doors for Airbus A321 out of here. It will be all on Indigo or anybody which is there. All I'm saying is we are delivering 100% on time, zero defects for last 28 months to Airbus. Nothing happens without training, development, skilling. Services business did not grow out of Bangalore without development. Amount of investment Infosys and other people did to development has to happen in manufacturing if you really want. But there may be more specific skilling needs to happen. We have done this, we have to do this, no choice.
Right. So it's
it's
ultimately the
capabilities
industry,
there, skilling.
just like IT.
One element, if I can add,
Yeah.
so sorry. I think the one worrying aspect which I missed mentioning is that the gross enrollment ratio for the southern states are typically better than that of the northern states. However, Karnataka, the state of Karnataka, is a laggard amongst all the southern states. Yeah. It's right now about 34%, which is much behind Tamil Nadu's 51%. We cannot ignore that. And that is an area that really needs to be looked at, because the incentive for youth to be able to come and get themselves education, the lack of modularity that is available, or mobility in learning, are going to be issues which will plague us in the future.
Mr. Reddy?
Yeah, see, as a chamber, our slogan is beyond Bangalore, because we can't afford the land cost and the labor cost in Bangalore, surrounding Bangalore. About 50 to 60 kilometers, there is no land available, and you can't even afford the land cost for the MSMEs, especially MSMEs. See, what we are telling this, FMGC clusters should be beyond Bangalore, like what you said, Hubli, Dharwad, Belgaum, and Gadag, all those places, they should be an FMGC clusters. And they are coming out with one district and one product that should be encouraged. And from North Karnataka to the port of Mangalore port, the infrastructure, that should be developed first. Without that, one industry can't survive in North Karnataka. That should be the main point. Infrastructure should be developed. And even the license Raj of in the MSME industries, how many licenses can MSME can afford? They should be one employed, permanently employed, to look into all this license Raj. So that should be all be in a single license and single window license. That should come up first. Then automatically the investments and industry will be happy to work from the outer Bangalore city.
Right. Mr. Gowda, though Karnataka kind of tops the FDI charts, very attractive investment destination, there is a sense that it's been losing ground to neighboring states. Tamil Nadu has inherent strengths in automotive and engineering. Telangana has been making a lot of noise about their single window clearance system. And as Mr. Pai said, Ola and Ather are today in Krishnagiri in Tamil Nadu. Why is this happening, and what will you do differently to ensure that, these entrepreneurs invest in Karnataka?
So just like
Foxconn is perhaps an exception. They've recently said they will invest in the state, but we've seen these investments being lost to neighboring states.
Yeah, no, it was quite a shock when Ola announced that they were going to establish in Hosur. Now, that has actually historically been one of the challenges. So Hosur is Tamil Nadu area, which is so close to Bengaluru, and they've been benefiting from Bangalore city and providing a lot of incentives, including land, including other kinds of incentives. Well, we need to match them. We need to provide more than matching. We need to provide the other kinds of, facilitation. It's easier regulations, support of other kinds, including on the human capital investment side. So there's just so many dimensions of interventions that are required. Similarly, when we talk about industrial zones elsewhere, it's not just about creating, acquiring land and saying, come and put up your sheds. It's also about, providing a lot more than just land and some facilities. You need better infrastructure all the way to ports, as Mr. Reddy pointed out. But along with that, there's a lot of soft infrastructure. You need to go in there and work with the companies that are coming in, create synergies, allow for, sort of linkages with the neighboring districts and colleges and universities. There are a lot of engineering colleges outside of Bangalore as well. And how much connection do they have with industry? So there's quite a bit that needs to be done on those dimensions as well. So I think those are many of the initiatives that we'll be taking forward. We'll also be looking at agriculture. During our last government, we also had something called grand challenges. We focused on agriculture. We focused on other kinds of non-mainstream IT domains. And there are others. There's pharmaceuticals, there's biotech, there's garments of different kinds, not just what you see in Bangalore. But if you go to Hassan, you'll see Himatsinka Saide having a very world-class facility. What does it take to create those sorts of clusters, to SEZs of various kinds? So that's something that we'll be working towards. And jobs, of course, is one of our primary criteria as well.
Right. Chandra, I like hearing these grand statements. Look at the manifesto of one political party. 50,000 crore of subsidies to be given away as monthly income. Other party says 16,000 crores. Where is the focus on jobs? Where is the focus on human capital? Where is the focus on higher education? Where is the focus on skilling? Zero. This is only talk. Yes, they have to come to power because they don't know how to get jobs and develop. They'll give doors and say come to power. When they come to power, where is the money for this? I'll give some example. Bangalore has got 23 lakh people in technology. 11 lakh Kannadigas born here. For 20 years, we've been telling government, train people in North Karnataka where the GR is 19%. South Karnataka is maybe 50%. Train them. They got good jobs. Get them jobs. They say yes, yes, yes. No government has said no to us for the last 20 years. Everybody says yes. R.V. Deshpande did a wonderful job. Okay? But they don't put money. They don't put it. Just don't understand. The jobs are the most important thing. Manufacturing is extremely important. You must give labor-intensive job because the great majority of people are there. Today, 45% of people who work depend on agriculture. 55% depend on services and industry. Okay, services 33, industry I think should be 19%. Yeah. We need to bring down agriculture to maybe 25%. It doesn't pay like he said. And what is the way out? The way out, because people in agriculture are low skilled. Industry, labor intensive industry, next to them, develop the small cities in North Karnataka, start flatted factories, give 2,000 rupees subsidy to a person who gets a job in the industry, provided pays EPFO. Don't give 2,000 rupees grant to every woman in the state, but give 2,000 rupees to a person who gets a job. Incentivize jobs.
See, when people are hurting with the burden of inflation, you need to reach out and provide them some support. We don't need to be callous. We need to be supportive. We want them to not worry about day-to-day survival. We want them to start thinking about their future and how to invest in that future, how to invest in their own skilling, in their aspirations, rather than mere survival. So what you call doles is actually social safety net that will help our people focus on investing in their own futures.
I don't know. I'm conflicted on this. I mean, do you want to give people free fish or do you want to teach them how to fish? I think it's a very important
You don't wait for them to starve and to be so incapable of doing anything or even getting out there to go out and fish.
Chandra, this is the richest state in India. 3,05,000 per capita income. Richest state in India.
Mr. Gowda finish and then you can continue. Yeah.
Basic point is, this is not something that we can ignore. People are in pain. If you look at the divide within the country, who is doing better and who is worse off, you will see that the poor are facing a bigger burden. They're much more worse off. And you need to step up and do something about it. You can't just keep looking forward without looking at who's fallen behind.
Mr. Pai.
Chandra, nobody will say that don't give support to poor people. We must give the necessities of life to every Indian. A roof over the head, water in the tap, power in the switch, a toilet in the house, a gas stove, a bank account, health insurance, money in the bank, education, and food. We must give them. But not to everybody. Give it to the people targeted, give it to them. For the rest, give them higher education, like Ashwin said. Give them good schooling. Let me tell you, give another piece of data. In Karnataka, 45% of children in class 1 are in government schools. Government spent 35,000 crores. They got 230,000 teachers. But children are not going to government schools. Government schools are pretty good, but they're managed badly. People are taking away and putting them into bad private schools. Why is that? We need to invest in good school education. That's the only thing that can improve people. Yes, focus on the poor. But don't say everybody will get 2,000 rupees. 2 crore women will get 2,000 rupees a month. It's not going to work. Where is focus on jobs? Skill people, like you said. Invest in North Karnataka. Build the roads. Build that tunnel to Mangalore. There's a tunnel to Mangalore which we've been asking to be built to go to the port because they go to Chennai with a higher cost. Japan is giving money. They're not been able to do it. Gadkari announced, then he went back. Again it happened. It happened in their government. Where is the focus? We need to focus on jobs. We need to focus on higher education. We need to focus on health. We need to focus on infrastructure. That's the only way for Karnataka. Karnataka is not Bihar or UP. We have solved that problem of want. There is want in a few people. Do it for them. Give jobs, high quality jobs to young people. Support him.
Competitiveness has a big, infrastructure has a big impact on the competitiveness of what we can deliver globally. In just the transportation, the port access, inland transportation, it adds 2 to 3% to our cost structure. Just extra. I'm talking extra compared to China or other countries. Imagine some of these consumer durable FMCG business operate on 3% margins, especially if you want to compete globally. So you cannot really succeed just killing the people and everything. We have to look at holistically, as you said. Infrastructure is a big key. One thing, whenever we have set up a zone, it is always on a highway because I cannot bring a road to my place where I am, but I have to just go where the road is. In the US, I could get them to put a road, but not in this country. So I just go where the road is and build our facility.
Mr. Reddy, what will it take for many more equises to come up in other regions? What kind of incentives are entrepreneurs looking for from whoever comes to power?
See, let them come, anybody. We industrialists and we people want to work for the government. We will work whether it is BJP or Congress or JDS. That is not our problem. That is their problem. Our problem is only concentrated on trade and industry. See, now, for example, I'll tell you one thing. Now, government will allot 1 acre or something at 1 lakh rupees. By the time they give the position certificate, it would have cost you 2 lakh rupees. Where will be the fund? The banks doesn't fund you. For 2 lakh rupees, they doesn't give you the amount. They give on the 1 lakh rupees only the interest and the loans, they will get it. See, that should be the attitude. They should develop the industry infrastructure to the industrial area first, and then they should allot the land. Instead of developing everything, they will allot the land and they will put the cost on us afterwards. Where will the MSM industry people have the money for that land cost?
Right. Mr. Karo, a lot of people on the panel have spoken about the cost of regulatory compliance. Ritu also brought up regulatory cholesterol. How much of this can be addressed at the state level? What can be done to reduce the burden? You know, he spoke about filing and signing n number of forms.
You know, there are 63,000. They prepared a report. 63,000 compliances. Government of India says we removed 30,000 something, but we have not seen the list of 30,000 removed. We don't know. They said they removed. State, because it is a state subject. You see, most of the regulations are state. Let me tell you, Department of Labor harasses you the most in this state. We need a Department of Employment. The Factories Act to be amended. Government knows it. We have given them, but they control. You know, Chandra, if government loses power to control industry, go for rent seeking, what happens? It goes all the way to the top. Every government. I'm telling you, it's terrible to be in industry here, at least in services like export. We could talk to people like Rajeev Gowda, talk to S.M. Krishna, talk to R.V. Deshpande. They helped us out. We know they removed some of the things. But for these poor people, they don't care. MSMEs, they don't care. You will stand outside the door. The factory inspector will harass. The power inspector will come and turn on the power. The industry pays 3,500 crores subsidy as on power to others. 14,000 crore is the subsidy paid by government for free power and so-called power. Maybe 30% is robbed. You talk to farmers, they said we don't get power. 30,000 crore subsidy is already there in the budget in Karnataka this year. The whole thing, we have to focus on job creation. We have to remove compliances. We have to incentivize jobs and not capital. Yeah. I'm sure Rajeev will agree. Because we have to have good school education, give more scholarship for children. Only 1,500 crores is spent in the budget for higher education. Whether the Congress government, BJP government, they're the same. They don't want to focus on higher education. We started the 7 KITs, Karnataka and Technology, in the budget. They given 50 crores for 7 and say we want to be like IIT. IIT, 50 crores, peanuts. I mean, come on. We can afford to spend money. Please spend money on bringing up people, skilling people, development. And 5 years, there's no state like Karnataka in India. It's a great state. Fantastic state. Great people. Wonderful people. Very welcoming to the outsiders. Look at Rajeev. He sacrificed everything to write policy. He's writing policy for his government. They don't listen to him, of course. But he's a brilliant guy.
Just following up on the, Chandra, just following up.
I'll get a word in sometime.
Sure.
Just following up on what he said with respect to the regulatory, the significant, especially manufacturing, most of it is state subject, and it can be impacted. I'll just give you, we fought for 2 years to get women to be working in the second shift. Okay? So finally we got permission, but we had to send a security guard with the woman to their house when they finish the shift. That becomes complicated. Okay? Then we asked for overtime. Overtime, they increased to 125 hours per quarter. And that's the maximum you can do overtime. And we get letters from sometimes from the people within the government saying that, why are you giving the same person overtime? If he's skilled, if he needs to do overtime, what's wrong within the law? So we get certain things, it doesn't make sense to me, but all I'm saying is there is a system which is already set up. They want to keep creating issues, and so that we need to keep responding and discussing with them. Right. There's no violation. Still they have a question in their mind, why are we doing some things?
So if I may just jump in, a political will, a facilitative attitude.
Mr. Gada, first of all, Mr. Pai claims you're writing policy, but people are not listening to us.
No. You see, I've been involved with manifestos when I was a member of parliament in Delhi, but as a member of the opposition. So we are in Karnataka.
But now people will listen to you if you win.
I'm confident that they will listen to not just me, but they'll listen to Mr. Pai and Mr. Meligeri and Rituparna and Mr. Reddy and you too, for that matter, because we're going to be a government that's going to source ideas about what can take the state forward. And that's what I was trying to say. It's an attitude shift that's required, not to really, extort and extract, but to support and facilitate growth. And that involves also, at one level, making it easier to do business, but also to put in place, to fill the gaps that exist of various kinds, whether it's on the human capital side, whether it's on infrastructure side, linkages, international linkages. What can a government do? This is all called industrial policy. It sort of fell into disfavor, but actually there is a lot that a government needs to do, and I think we'll put our brains together and we'll make that happen.
But if you can just weigh in on, what they said about regulatory compliance and how a lot of it falls within the state's ambit, what will you do differently to reduce, perhaps Mr. Meligeri's nightmare?
I think one of the first things would be to do a little survey of what all are out there that need to be eliminated. Even in the center, every once in a while, you see some old laws being removed, many of these laws had criminal provisions, for example. Those also had to be removed. So those are all things that, across the board we're supportive of, and we'll find what exists at the state level that needs to change and make those changes.
I think the draft rules, which have been lying in the cold storage for a while, if each and every one of them gets notified rather than selectively pulling out 12 hours work and all, you will unlock a lot of formal job creation. That's all that we need to do. With due regards, we really don't have to do any more research. I think since Mr. Verma's first labor recommendation report in the 1970s, honestly, the recommendations have not changed. So I don't think there is a dearth of ideas or suggestions or recommendation. What we need to do is, again, maybe the political will to get them notified. believe it or not, that it's a pity. Yeah, are the 4 labor codes with the rules perfect? They are not, but they are far better than what we have experienced in the country so far. That's all we need to do, Chanda. There is really no other magic solution here that is required. And most importantly, the geopolitical situation worldwide is India's greatest opportunity right now. And the fact that Karnataka as a state has a great image worldwide, has the ability to be able to attract some of the business which is going away, let's say, from China. And the fact that southern states have an advantage is well known in this geopolitical crisis. And hence, this is the time to strike, the iron needs to be struck. And if we are not going to go look beyond a Hosur or a Bangalore and spread out this opportunity across the state, it is honestly our loss completely.
Mr. Gato, would you like to respond to that? That, the rules are there, the survey is being done, the research is done. What we need is execution.
No, I think she was speaking at a much broader level. We're talking about Karnataka specific. Here is a document called a Vision Karnataka recommendations on a variety, a variety of themes. And the underlying message there is survive, revive, and thrive. This is post-COVID. This is the roadmap that we created in the Congress Party. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunity to take these things forward. But we do need to know the specifics, and we need to get a sense of where the flaws arise and correct them. That's all there is to it.
Chandra, the line-by-line compliance she's got. They've done the best study in this country for the last many years. They publish it. They'll tell you what to amend, where to amend, what it is. Rajeev, it's all there. Please read it, Rajeev.
I'll talk to team leads. We'll talk to team leads and get that in.
After the session. Mr. Reddy, you wanted to weigh in.
Yeah. See, compliances are very important. Even the issuing notice and issuing arrest warrants. It should not be in the hands of officials. It should be in the high end or court. They should apply for the court whether what we have done wrong. So court should issue arrest warrant or any complaints matters, anything. Lot of harassments are there. Even for pollution control board, for them talking about for MSME, what is the harassment they are doing? There's no category, A category, white category, red category. They don't have the specification at all. Simply they give the notice. What should an industry do? The policies are there, but implementation level, it is very pathetic.
How are you going to change that, sir? The gap between policy and implementation?
Well, that's where leadership comes in. That's where commitment to better governance comes in. That's where rejection of extortionate state comes in. That's what we're all about. And so just wait 1 week and then see.
I think the one thing I can say over the last 15 years or so, when since 2007, I've been doing manufacturing. Several governments have come and gone. The focus has not been in manufacturing, except for individuals, some ministers.
It's come down in the last 5-7 years.
Because
Manufacturing share of
Do you
GDP.
think that will change because of, the center's push on PLI, and we've seen that, getting success in the mobile segment, and now they want to expand it to other industries as well?
It could change, and Karnataka hasn't benefited as much from the mobile manufacturing compared to Tamil Nadu.
Yeah. But that's also because Tamil Nadu has inherently had strengths in that area with Nokia.
And I think there is customers, there are large companies who are focused on India to move their supply chain at least 20-25% to India. That is helping to drive most of the southern states. They are penetrating everywhere in the southern states to set up manufacturing facilities, asking their suppliers to, and developing new Indian suppliers to be the source for them to buy from. And that is something which is going to help, combined with the PLI and the spec scheme, which is already there under Minister of Electronics Industry, Electronics, METI, whatever this thing is. I think those will help. Incentives help, but his point is job creation. If you look at it, a lot of electronics assembly is not as much jobs, although value is there, but number of job creation may not be that high right now. But you need to get into the further down the value stream to increase the number of jobs. You just do the last mile assembly, bringing everything, importing, it will not help. But over a period of time, we have to go down, vertically integrate, get the components also happening out of India.
Chandra, you know, Bangladesh exports more garments than India. When India was 10 billion, Bangladesh was 1 billion. Now Bangladesh come to 45, 50 billion. India has some 20 billion. And they buy our yarn, they don't grow cotton, and they do garments and they're exporting. We need to get our priorities right. We have to create job creation. We have to incentivize labor-intensive jobs. We have to incentivize high-tech jobs in Bangalore. Job creation should be the first focus, and government should work towards that. And that means a lot of things have to be changed to make life easier for people to do industry in our state. It's a Karnataka's thing that has to be done. Karnataka should have enlightened leadership. We have good policies. We are not behind in policies. After the policies issued, implementation stops because nobody asks, what have you implemented? What are the KPIs? I mean, you know, and let me tell you the last point. I worked with government for the last 25 years. No government has said no to any suggestion. Everybody says yes, every minister says yes, every chief minister says yes, but it doesn't work on the ground. They're not able to implement it. They're not able to enforce it.
One other point to mention, that Karnataka has tremendous capability in research and development. That's a dimension that Indian industry has not really paid enough attention to, and we need to really incentivize that as well.
Right. On that note, this has been a very engaging session. Thank you all very much. A huge round of applause for our speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Request Chandra to please give a token of appreciation to all the panelists, please. Thank you, panelists. Definitely job creation has to be on top priority for the next government. Hope all your wonderful audience here and those watching it live on Moneycontrol's YouTube channel, Facebook and Twitter pages are tweeting with the hashtag MCPolicyNext. And now it is time for the special session that we all have been waiting for which I need to invite someone who needs no introduction, who's carrying the heavy responsibility on his shoulders of skilling India's workforce and boosting entrepreneurship in the country. Someone who has begun the tough task of making India self-reliant in semiconductor manufacturing. He is widely recognized as the most active member of parliament and has a deep focus on digital India, internet and technology issues, spectrum allocation, net neutrality, and much more. Let me welcome the Minister of State for Electronics and Information Technology and Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Please put your hands together for Mr. Rajeev Chandrasekhar.
Good evening to all of you, and thank you for inviting me to this evening of many conversations I noticed from the program. Thank you, Network 18. It is obviously election season, so this is a bit of a break for me from all of the other venues that I've been to in the last 4 or 5 days. It's a break to walk into the Four Seasons and have an occasion to speak with all of you about not just technology, but specifically I've been asked to speak to you on technology and governance and democracy. Let me, in a sense, take you back to 2008, and there was a very similar gathering in Delhi, and it was hosted by a group of journalists, and I don't particularly recall the organization, but it was an organization of journalists. And they had invited a few MPs, and they had invited the then INB minister to speak about the internet and whether the internet and indeed social media would make an impact on politics and governance, a very similar topic, and I suspect a very similar audience. And there were, as usual, 4 or 5 typical Gyanis that you see in Delhi quite often. And the general consensus that came out of that conversation, except for 1 or 2 outliers, was that this is a passing fad. And certainly the internet technology, while it's great and social media is great and all of that, it helps you connect. That word was used quite a bit. That it will have no real influence on governance and democracy and politics. And I recall the minister then, the then minister, saying, "Ye to," in Hindi, for those of you who don't understand Hindi, I'll translate, "Ye to ek elite living room ka phenomenon hai." Means in the sense that this whole social media and politics and conversations on social media are a very elite thing, and therefore not really impacting the politics and democracy and governance of a big country like India. Fast forward to 2023, and today as we campaign and we are having this chat in the backdrop of the Karnataka election, I can assure you that social media, digital media, conversations on that are certainly much more influential and shaping the outcome of what people think and talk about around these elections a lot more than at any time before in the history of India, and certainly a lot more than what conventional media and conventional news platforms are doing today. So technology in governance, technology in democracy is here to stay. It is now a question of how the good of this technology can be harnessed and we come to a consensus without always conflating user harm with freedom of expression. How can we come to a consensus about how do we create guardrails and principles so that the same technology that delivers so much good does not create harm, does not get misused. So I just wanted to leave that there as a thought for you before I dive into talking about technology in governance. I think in 2015 when the Prime Minister launched Digital India, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with that event, and it was an event, and I was in the audience very similarly like you are today in the audience. And he laid out this vision of how he saw technology impacting India. And the conventional narrative about technology before that was the usual conversation about the next billionaire or the next great idea or the next great company or who's bigger, Infosys or TCS, all of that, the net worth. Those were the usual conversations around technology pre-2015. But he proposed something very interesting and very different in that 2015 launch of Digital India. And he said, I want technology to transform the lives of Indians. And I want to have it impact governance, and I wanted to have it impact democracy. So he laid that down as one of his outcomes, one of his desired outcomes out of Digital India. Then he said, I also want Digital India to expand the economy, create more opportunities, and the digital economy piece of the economy should grow fast, create more opportunities for entrepreneurship, innovation. And the third sort of foundational pillar that he laid down was that India needs to move from being a consumer of tech and almost a mute spectator to this innovation and disruption around us that the internet represented, and move from being a mute spectator and a consumer to being a producer, architect, designer, solution provider, product provider, device provider, etc., etc. So these were the three sort of basic principles he laid down. But I draw you back to what the first basic goal that he set out was, that it needs to transform people's lives. And I take you back to the late 80s. There was this famous quote that had become almost like a descriptor of India, this famous quote that 100 rupees when it leaves Delhi, only 15 rupees reaches the beneficiary's account or the beneficiary's interest, and that 85% or 85 rupees was in a sense the cost of governance in India. And that story stuck, and in a lot of ways became the descriptor of Indian governance, that it was leaky, it was slow, it was extremely expensive. And for many years after that, actually, the Chinese up north even perpetuated one argument that in India and in Asia in particular, Asia in general and pointing to India in particular, that for large countries in Asia, it required an authoritarian type of a system to deliver to people. That democracies were nice, noisy, and were fun to talk about, but essentially democracies could never deliver because of this whole 85% corrosive, leaky superstructure that democracies represented. This was then the kind of narrative about India, that this is a great place, good people, great country, great heritage, great culture, but extremely ineffective in terms of being able to deliver what people wanted. And you fast forward to the last 9 years and you see, using technology, we have now turned that narrative on its head, and we can deliver 100 rupees meant for a particular beneficiary to his or her account directly, without leakage, without any delay. And that's specific example, in a sense, typifies, characterizes the power of technology, and the power of technology in the context of a country like India. Large, diverse people, very, very far away from state capitals and governments. And that technology has been deployed, used, initially as various independent applications, and now into something called the India Stack, that is really earning the awe and respect of countries all over the world, where the government of India has created applications with startups, with entrepreneurs, to solve a government problem. For example, the UPI, or the Aadhaar identity authentication platform, to solve a government problem, but has become the center of a robust, economically active, financially lucrative ecosystem of entrepreneurship and innovation that the fintech ecosystem represents. I think Chandra had invited me to Mumbai to speak to the fintech community, and Shweta, you were there as well. And I said precisely this, that who would have thought, and you had to be some huge kind of an astrologer and heavily invested in some crystal ball to have thought in 2015 that those decisions that were decisions taken to solve a government problem, a challenge in governance, would actually end up spawning innovation in ecosystem of this scale, size, and global relevance. Like I said, it started with these various pieces, disconnected pieces. They have grown to the India Stack. And the India Stack, I want to share with you, is now being increasingly asked for by countries around the world. In the month of March, end of March, we were to sign, 7 countries were supposed to sign MOUs where they wanted to implement the India Stack in part or full in their countries. We have deferred that to June, and there'll be a global India Stack conference where there are going to be representatives of countries coming from all over the world. And we have created at the same time, in the last 4 months, an India Stack developer ecosystem. So let's just say a country X wants to implement the India Stack. along with the technology, along with the stack, we will introduce them to a whole ecosystem of startups in India that can then help them implement, customize, execute, as the case may be. So we've seen, in a sense, Digital India 1.0. You've seen how technology is certainly transforming the narrative about India, about Indian government, about governance. And over the next few weeks and months, you will hear about how Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has now decided to press the pedal even further on the digitalization of government. So India Stack with India AI, the other big program that we are building out, will enable us, in a sense, to create India Stack 2.0 and complete and accelerate the digitalization of government, even in areas currently where public services still are not digitalized and public services are not available. You will see, for example, a single app for the government of India that will allow a citizen not just to engage with the government, but to enroll, onboard, get his dashboard or her dashboard in terms of where he or she is vis-a-vis a government scheme, what other schemes he or she is entitled to. So a larger level or degree of sophistication and intelligence that will allow the relationship between citizen and government to be certainly taken from the current levels of trust to even the next level of trust and interactivity and satisfaction between the government. In addition, the government intends to use AI. We have an India AI program. As you know, the Prime Minister announced that in the budget with 3 centers of excellence and a considerable amount of money that has been allotted to that. We expect the governance stack itself to be layered with using the data sets and all of the information that we have to become much more smarter, much more intelligent, and learn and become dynamically evolving instead of the current one-shoe-fits-all type model that invariably happens in the design of schemes. I want to caution the organizers that this is a topic that I can go on and on about, so if you want me to stop, you have to wave your hand and tell me to stop. But I've always been a big believer in the power of tech, but I think after seeing what the Prime Minister has done with tech and how he has, in a sense, directed and vectored tech into the right areas, in the right applications, I believe that, especially in India, technology has a role in governance for sure, in democracy, in terms of creating more enlightened and aware citizens, but also that this partnership of the government and citizens and this quest of the government to accelerate digitalization and digital government also has a effect on creating innovation ecosystems and growth of the innovation ecosystem in a partnership that is really win-win. Startups, governments and citizens as 3 sort of corners of a triangle that are effectively driving India's growth and India's position as a preeminent country in using technology for the good of its people and for transforming the lives of citizens and the effectiveness of government. I will end here, and I certainly, like I said, I can go on and on about this, but I think we are living in extremely exciting times. Regardless of which side of this conversation you're on, we are living in exciting times if you're in government. We are living in exciting times if you're a startup. We are living in exciting times if you're a citizen that is determined to engage with the government, hold the government more accountable. Either way, I think as an Indian democracy, technology has clearly demonstrated that it is here to stay. It has a role not just in the India of today, but in the new India that the Honorable Prime Minister is building, and we are all participants in. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Karnataka.
Thank you so much, sir. I would invite Shweta for a fireside chat with the Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandrasekhar. You know, when you speak, it's so hopeful listening to you. You have all of us enthused, and in fact, Chandra and I were just discussing our next collaboration with you. so we're looking forward to that. You know, these are exciting times. India has experienced unprecedented change, especially in the tech space. We are sitting in Bangalore today, and the backdrop is the Karnataka elections. And before you, we had a bunch of startup founders talking about what does India's Silicon Valley want. And while I was listening to them, I was wondering, why is it that the tech capital of the country and one of the largest tech capitals in the world, it has not been able to come up with a solution to beat the voter apathy of Bangalore, to derive solutions to Bangalore's problems that really sound like a broken record, because these are the same issues we've been discussing election after election.
So maybe we'll just ask ChatGPT that question, and maybe that will throw up the answer. I certainly don't know the answer. And for those in the audience who know me from my work in Bengaluru, you know that I have tried several years, all the way from 2008, spending a lot of my personal capital and money and personal political equity in trying and getting people to come and turn out for the municipal elections, the BBMP elections, which are really the most important elections if you're a resident of a city, and the state elections. And while the turnout for the national elections have certainly increased, and there is considerable participation and enthusiasm, it is one of those abiding mysteries on why people just don't want to show up for the assembly election and the local body elections. And there is an inversion which is true, which is that the more important the election is to your personal life and community and neighborhood, the less the participation is. So you have, for example, the BBMP election where the percentages are 36, 37%. Then the state election, it goes to 48%, and the national election goes to the 60s. So it's a question that I certainly don't have an answer for. I've made my effort this time again to try and enthuse voters, especially the intellectually, more, let's say, aware and sophisticated amongst all of you, to come out and vote. And I certainly hope you will. I certainly think you should. And, for those who worry about Bengaluru and care about the future of the city, I certainly think that the least you can do is come out and vote on voting day.
So, there is broad consensus that Karnataka has its issues, Bangalore has its issues. Yet the narrative from the BJP has completely turned. It's become a narrative centered around identity. It's become an emotive issue. The Congress has also followed suit. Why is it that Karnataka is not discussing the issues that matter? Why is your party not talking about the BBMP election that happened last in 2020? It's not taking up the cause of the infrastructure mess that Bangalore specifically is in. Why is it that we're subverting these important issues?
Look, I would hesitate to call it subversion, and I know it makes for great copy and stuff like that, but we are actually running an absolutely crystal clear campaign, and all the way to the day of our manifesto, we were talking about 3.5 years of performance, our record, how the double-engine government will give 5 more years of development to Karnataka and Bengaluru. We specifically, in the context of Bengaluru, laid out our vision for the state capital region. And things were going fine, and we were prepared to deal with all of the lies and allegations that were being thrown at us, and we were planning to deal with it with the truth. But when a political party starts playing fuzzy football and starts, I can deal with lies and we can deal with lies. When they start bringing in appeasement, when they start deliberately talking about giving reservations to one particular community where we have nothing against the community, but clearly designed to be a very different type of a political discourse, we have a problem with that. And we have a problem with that when you start pandering to the worst of the worst elements and your manifesto then becomes that, then it is our duty to sit up and protest and oppose that. And we are very clear about ourselves as a political party. We believe in the politics of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Vikas. Nothing that the Prime Minister, no scheme of the Prime Minister, nothing that our government in Karnataka has ever done, has ever discriminated, has ever appeased anybody or left out anybody. So we have this problem when people say we will do things and we will promise things that are ultra vires the constitutions. And so therefore we will speak out, and we will speak out loud. Now, whether it becomes identity politics as a consequence and who started it, I suspect you don't want to get into that debate of who started it. But this is legitimate political discourse when a party that is increasingly losing sight of what people want and what the discourse should be, and instead of placing any one idea on development of Bengaluru, makes banning of an organization the principal pillar on which his manifesto rests, then we will wake up and say, look, that's not on.
So, we're talking about reservation politics. We're also talking about freebie politics. Both parties have put out manifestos where both Congress and the BJP are offering a slew of freebies. Now, that's not progressive politics, right? And when the BJP says that they stand for development, they stand for progressive politics, but the manifestos are contrary to that.
No, again, I don't know which manifesto was you read, but certainly our manifesto doesn't compare at all with what the Congress has done. We have not done any freebie politics. Ours is not a party, nor is our government vested on the idea that we will give things to people in return for their votes. We have a development vision. Our Prime Minister says that we have lost so much of time in the last 60, 65 years that we must accelerate development. We must really make this double-engine Sarkara be a narrative, not just about one party and the same party being in two places, but the two governments working together to accelerate development, investment, job creations. That is what our narrative is. Now, if you contrast that with parties, and I have said this publicly, it's a very lazy kind of politics that we saw first in Gujarat, and then I took on that type of Revdi politics, which is in the absence of any other narrative. All you say is, I'll give you this amount of money, I'll give you that amount of money. Look, this is inspired by some parties in the regional party setup like DMK, etc., etc. But certainly it's not something that people want, because people are today looking for a better future. They are looking for a better future for their children. They are looking for better infrastructure. So they are not looking for handouts. That politics of handouts, that politics of, in a sense, buying your vote by giving you some crumbs, is a politics of the 70s. And this party, unfortunately, the party that we are really talking about, hasn't made the transition into a politics of aspiration. And our politics, our vision is really about creating more and more opportunities for the young Indian, building an enabling ecosystem of skills, of education, of fine institutions, of infrastructure, roads, railway stations, new trains, new airports. We believe that the investment of public capital should go there to create a better future for these youngsters and the families that with whom they live. Now, if there is a group of political parties that insist that they will continue the same Garibi Hatao, the sort of a empty promise, and then give out some handouts and perpetuate the poverty, perpetuate the status quo of their lives, then we are certainly not that kind of a party. We are a party that says we want to change your life and we want to take you into a better future.
So you represent the state of Karnataka in the Rajya Sabha. You are a technocrat. You built a business in the state. You're one of the most successful entrepreneurs. We had entrepreneurs on the stage talk about the challenges that they face. And I'll quote one of them who said that there are 225 filings that are required every year to set up and run a business in an SEZ. So, while we are talking about building a nurturing ecosystem for startups, we talk about India's startup story, but when you hear them, while there has been a lot of push from the government, but yet there are challenges on the ground. Is there something that you would like to say today to the
No, look, I will maintain what I had a program some 3 hours ago with a group of manufacturing MSMEs. And I said here what I said there. I certainly think for a young Indian today, they are the most fortunate generation in the history of independent India. And I say this absolutely without any doubt in my mind. I've been an entrepreneur. I can assure you that I can write a 10-volume book about the struggles. And the so-called struggles of today pale in comparison to what we went through, which is not a typical old man conversation with a young man, but I just wanted to lay it out there.
Or a young woman.
Yeah, a young woman, exactly. I just want to certainly make the point that the SEZ issues are a little different from the normal startup ecosystem. The SEZs were conceived with a very different framework in mind and are struggling to align to this new world of tech startups, working from home, hybrid work. All of that, the SEZs are not really designed for. So now you have a problem where there is a software tech company in an SEZ, but 50% of them work from home. And the entire SEZ framework is about these are the employees who will be working in the SEZ, and this is the kind of output you'll come from the SEZ. So the SEZ is not really the right example to showcase the difficulties of the startups, number one. Which is not to say that the SEZs don't require some reform. Piyush Goyal ji is certainly working on it. We have had a number of discussions on it, and I think over the next few months, certainly that will become clearer. But broadly in the startup ecosystem today, I can't, I mean, there'll always be some compliance and income tax filings and all of that. But look, I will say this with the absolute confidence in my command, that it is the easiest thing today to be a startup. 1 year ago, when the Honorable Prime Minister launched the semiconductor mission, and he gave us 76,000 crores to invest, he particularly made sure that there were 2,000 crores set aside for startups. There were no startups in India. Semiconductor design startups? Huh? What? Where? And we have today 28 semiconductor design startups doing cutting edge work, creating devices, AI compute, AI chips, sensing, IoT, all kinds of devices. And the government has bootstrapped many of them with capital. And these are all people, students from IITs and other colleges who basically just went to our website, applied to the government of India. The next thing they knew, 2 months later, or a month and a half later, they were getting on a dais like this, and a check was being given to them by the Minister of State or the DG of CDAC. So I certainly think that it is an absolutely great time, golden era for startup and entrepreneurship in India today. Are things 100% perfect? They are not. I don't make that claim. Will they ever be 100% perfect? I suspect no.
So if a BJP government were to be voted back to power, what are you promising them?
No, first of all, I don't think there's an if about it. I think one of the things that you must not underestimate is the intelligence and the highly developed sense of their own future that the Karnataka voter represents. They certainly know that the next 5 years, they don't want a DK Shivkumar and a Siddaramaiah plundering and messing around. So I see the future of Karnataka, future of Bengaluru as from 2014 it has evolved into ITS to now internet startups, consumer tech startups. I think the next wave in Karnataka and Bengaluru will be electronics manufacturing, electronics design, semiconductor design, AI. And I think the entire span of opportunities in tech that the world is now experiencing and seeing, Bengaluru will see in the next 5 years.
So will we see greater focus on nurturing a manufacturing ecosystem? A lot of manufacturers prefer to go to Tamil Nadu, it's cheaper land.
Yeah, look, the manufacturing in India today, you've seen what Tim Cook said when he came in here and all the, apart from the opening of the store, the Apple and Samsung opportunity that is represented for India is a big, big opportunity. And the electronics manufacturing clusters have evolved into Tamil Nadu, one. Karnataka is the second cluster. Uttar Pradesh, Noida is the third cluster. And there is some activity happening in Andhra and Telangana, depending on the time of the day and the day of the month and the month of the year. Karnataka certainly has, and I will certainly make sure I put all the weight that I have, and I have quite a bit of it, to make sure Karnataka is certainly one of the principal poles for the electronics ecosystem, both in the design, ESD, and the manufacturing side in the coming years.
So more Foxconn-like investments in the state.
You know, we are at $75 billion of electronics manufacturing this year. Our target, the Prime Minister has given us a target of doing 300 billion by 25-26. And I just want to share with you and put this in context. In 2014, the total electronics production in India was about 1 lakh crores plus. And by 26, which is about 10 years on, in a decade, we would have reached 27 lakh crores. So 27x growth in a decade is the target. And I certainly want to see Karnataka and Bengaluru getting a big chunk of that, because there are so many benefits we are seeing. Women employment, for example, 70% of the electronics mobile phone sector employees are women. And they are young women who are getting skilled, and they are highly skilled during this whole process. So it is extremely transformational. There are a lot of jobs going to be created as a consequence. And I think there are downstream societal impacts of this that are sort of playing out as we see. And most of these, and I've visited all the factories that today exist in India, they're all from rural and semi-rural backgrounds. And what a sense of accomplishment, what a sense of empowerment when they are sitting on the assembly line and building the iPhone 14 and are now prepping for the iPhone 15 or the Samsung Galaxy, whatever the model is, and prepping for the next model. So I think it's got a huge multiplier effect on at many levels: economic, jobs, investment, confidence that the people have, the skills that are created as a consequence of these kind of high-tech manufacturing facilities.
We had psephologists. They were the first speakers in at the event today. And they predicted a very neck-to-neck fight between the BJP and the Congress. You have been camping here for a long time. You very actively engaged in planning Karnataka's campaign and executing it on ground. I want to get a sense from you on I want to get a number from you in terms of the seats that you're expecting to win.
Look, this neck-to-neck, Karnataka has always been a very competitive election bill. And I've been associated in various categories, from coffee boy to vada server, from 1995 all the way to now. So I have seen many elections. So I think to characterize this as somehow uniquely different in 2023 from, let's say, 2018 or 2013 is wrong. There is always a tough fight between the Congress-JDS combo and the BJP. In terms of where we will end up, I certainly think, and I'm not giving you any complicated psephology or mathematical models and all of that other stuff that passes off as gyan, but I certainly think that there is this state is going to give a decisive mandate, and they want a stable government after seeing the circuses that Congress and JDS ran for some years in the state. So I think stability, the fact that you want 5 years of a stable government, progress, development, investment, jobs, is certainly on top of the mind of all voters in Karnataka. And I think they will go through this process of saying who's best suited to deliver that. And I'm reasonably confident that most voters, and therefore in most constituencies, they will press the button on the Kamal. And so if you ask me what is the number of seats, I'll say a minimum of 113 and a maximum of 224. That's what I'll tell you.
I want to ask you, are there any trade secrets that you can reveal here in terms of how you've used tech in this campaign to manage perceptions, to ensure people come out to vote?
I think this is again a myth that some people build, that there is some complex Merlin-like magician, wizardish thing that you need to do on social media. Effectively, it's the same thing that you do with real media, or we did for many, many years, which is really get out there. We know the platform. The platforms are all known, whether they're YouTube, whether they're Insta, whether they're Meta, whether they're whatever. And you go put out there interesting content, truthful content that tells the people who are on the other side of it what it is this party is about, who are their candidates, what they are planning to do. And that's it. I don't think there is any, after the Cambridge Analytica thing, all of these platforms are wised up to making sure that misuse comes with a lot of punitive consequences. So I think it's very difficult today for platforms to do any Merlin-type magic. This is fairly straightforward common sense. These are the platforms. These are the ways to communicate. The shorter the video, the better. The more interesting the video, the better. Video is obviously trumps over text and print, which I'm sure Moneycontrol knows.
Sure. Okay, my last question, and I'm hoping that you'll give some good news to especially startup founders. It's on angel tax. It's a huge sore point with the startup community. We know that the finance ministry has been thinking, discussing, debating what to do with it. Is that something that you're taking up aggressively?
No, of course. This is not something I'm taking up. It is something that we have been taking up. And without getting into too much of granular details on this, there is some pushback in some areas of the revenue department, the income tax authorities, in terms of misuse and so on and so forth. But in principle, all of government is fairly clear in our mind, clear in the government's mind, with a clear mandate from our Prime Minister that we do not want any policy, any action of the government to create a road bump or a hurdle in terms of the growth trajectory of our startups. This is an article of faith for us. This is something you will see in all of the legislations that we will bring, all of the rules making that we will do, that we want it to be an enabling environment for our startups and our young Indians. On this particular issue, I understand there has been considerable debate, but I think if you give us some time, we will crack this problem reasonably soon.
Okay, thank you so much. We do hope that the next time we have you on our platform in Bengaluru, we don't have to quote this anecdote, which I'll quote right now, that one of the speakers had to travel for 85 minutes to reach here, and she was coming from Koramangala.
Yeah, I just came from Koramangala as well. So. No, look, again, let me tell you that Bengaluru is a city which is a sprawling city, and Koramangala is on the south and the east. So to come to the north, which is where you are, you have to cross the city. And if you cross the city at this time of the evening...
You live in Delhi. We can reach Manesar in that much time.
Yeah, but, Delhi doesn't have this type of layout of a city. We don't have to go through the city to get to the north or the east or south. You have something called the ring road.
The ring roads.
Yeah.
Okay, so to ring roads in Bangalore. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We wish you the very best.
So please stay back. I would like to invite Mr. Zakir Jacob, Managing Editor, CNN News 18, to please give a memento to the Minister. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Definitely we are looking forward to some news on angel tax soon. Moving on to the next session. Dream, dream, and dream. Because dreams transform into thoughts, and thoughts result into action. But what is it that the youth of Karnataka is dreaming of? Let's find out. Over to you, Shweta.
Thank you very much, Meghna. Can I please request everyone to come back and sit down? Well, that's also Bangalore for you, but I'm sure they'll be back. My next guest is Aishwarya Mahadev. Aishwarya, please come on stage. The very erudite and one of the few women who has been representing a national party and fighting some very, very tough debates. Aishwarya, a big, very warm welcome. Thank you so much. Please.
A bit anticlimactic after the minister, but we'll try, of course.
Well, you know, you shouldn't compare or even think. You shouldn't even compare or think about that, because you hold your own, and you know, we watched you in debates, and it's a tough fight to. It's really tough to show up every day and defend a party. I want to ask you, Aishwarya, that as a woman spokesperson for the Congress party, and in fact, at the beginning of the session, we were looking at the audiences as well. They're primarily men here. When you look at the party, when you look at whether the Congress or the BJP, only 9 tickets have been given to women, potential women MLAs. You look at in the past 66 years, Bengaluru has just had 7 women MLAs. Now that's a dismal record. Why is that? What is it about women and Karnataka politics that we are missing?
You know, I do not think it's only problematic in Karnataka. I think across the country also, whether it's parochial, patriarchal norms or whatnot, and you see it in every single line of work, whether it is journalism or whether it is also the corporate world, you see that women's opportunities are significantly lower compared to that of men. One, there is this inherent sort of thought process of whether inability or weaker and whatnot. And politics is one of those places, I believe, where the sun shines last when it comes to, like, you know, change and whatnot. However, I would like to be optimistic when I say that compared to what was previously the system for women, and before, of course, the Panchayat Raj and the urban local body amendments, I think there were hardly any women except for the ones at the top, the absolute top, at the pinnacle, and there was no representation of women anywhere else. And it wasn't a norm that you were going to see change, but when the amendment came in, people were forced to put in women just by the sheer act of reservation. So what was 30, 40 years ago, where 100% women were proxies for family members, over time, what I have seen, and I live and work in a rural area and constituency, out of the 100% women who were proxies, now it's probably 30 or 40 or 50%. So slowly over time, we're seeing that there is more political will, because one, it was forced upon them as a policy, but also that women resonate far better with the masses. And I think for us in Bangalore, we have some phenomenal, I think Soumya Reddy is one of them, that here is a phenomenal MLA. We have a higher number of women MLAs too. And I hopefully think in time, whether it's delimitation as an exercise or reservation as an exercise or just political parties propelling women, I think we're on the right path, because if you look at the number of women spokespersons, from 5 years ago to now, there are significantly higher number of us now. And I see it as a positive trajectory in time, Shweta, to be honest.
Okay, I hope so too. I really hope so. You know, when it comes to talking about what do women voters want? Now, I just have some numbers. In the 2018 election, there were 72.77% of male voters and 71.08% of women voters, which is a very high number. If you compare it to some of the northern states, it's nearly double. And we know that a lot of governments have re-engineered their campaigning, their policies to cater to the woman voter. I want to get a sense from you on what is the Congress party doing to appeal to the women voter. Are there policies? Is your campaign strategy even designed to cater to this very crucial voter base?
I think with the Congress, or rather, you know, the situation in Karnataka today is that we've gone back, especially post-COVID, that we've gone back to conversations of roti, kapda, makan again, because a lot of people lost entire livelihoods and had their entire lives washed out because of what happened in a lot of the situations. I think women voters in Karnataka are extremely conscious. They are extremely proactive, especially if you go to rural women, whether it's the Shri Shakti or the cooperative movements. A lot of women are very, very active. I think for women, the Congress has specifically reached out on things that affect them most. You know, a lot of us here have the sort of agency and will that we are working women without having to worry about whether my house is running, whether I can have my family fed. But for a predominant part of Karnataka and the women of Karnataka, that is still a major issue. The Congress party has basically done three very specific things, or rather two I'll talk about that I think are very important. Is one, today you cannot negate the fact, while we talk about technology and the advances and the leaps and strides we've also made massive leaps in the price of gas cylinders. We've made fabulous leaps in the price of daily essential commodities. We've also made wonderful leaps in the number of people that have gone below the poverty line over the years, which means that social security becomes that much more important. There are national factors we cannot control, like the gas price or the fuel prices. So the Congress government has very strict, very empathetically and also emphatically spoken about the idea that every woman in a household, the head of the household, because the Congress made sure that the PDS cards are given to the woman, will get 2,000 rupees a month, because we cannot fight back-breaking inflation now at a national level. So this is a safety net and a comfort for them. And the second is, a lot of people did not understand it, but for where I come from, the access to free transportation is so empowering for women, especially that don't have the agency of even having like somebody drop them or take them from place to place. And for the new age working woman today who inevitably had to take a job post-COVID, and we've seen this a lot in Karnataka because household incomes dropped, this is a huge positive agenda. To add to this, maternal and child nutrition we've focused on again. For dairy farmers in agriculture, we've decided that, it's a protsaha dana for dairy farmers. We're going to have better startup funds for women and also in the cooperative sector. So there's a lot that the Congress has done for women. Professor Gowda is probably a bigger expert on that than any of us. So I think we have a very positive agenda, not only from the perspective of a vote bank, but also from the perspective that this is a necessary push in order to ensure economic development further. Money in their hands is going to propel spending. It's going to change.
Is smoke-free cooking an issue? Is access to cylinders, is that an issue on ground where women vote?
It's a massive issue. So I'll tell you, when the Ujjwala Yojana began, or even before that, where I come from, in Kannada it's called Saudevole, which is basically your wood, your chulas, or what you would call. Otherwise, you had kerosene stoves. What you did was, one, firewood is now quite inaccessible, because you don't see the market plummeted when Ujjwala came in. And the second thing is kerosene is banned. So you brought in a gas cylinder for me, which at that point with the marketing companies and everything turned out quite reasonable when you first marketed it. You had this give up your subsidy scheme on the side. What was probably 400, 500, which mind you also when the gas cylinder price also hit 400, you saw a particular political party on the streets. But subsequently the prices began to rise. And for me, 1,000 rupees may not matter. But to a household that runs on 5,000 rupees, to have an entire portion of 1,000 rupees taken away for a gas cylinder is a huge deal. But what have you done now? You've made it an inevitability for them without any support because the subsidies have gone away. You're increasing gases. Smoke-free cooking in a lot of places, people are going back to cutting down trees. And where I come from in rural Mysore and whatnot, they're going back to chulas because it's just unaffordable. And to promise me 3 gas cylinders for 3 festivals may sound nice, but what happens for the rest of the months in the year? And it's a huge household issue for women that if you go onto the ground, you can ask them. They will recite the prices for you, and it's a huge issue.
So are you looking at promising reservation for women? Because this is something that's pending in the parliament. Are we looking at, and reservation has been mandated where panchayats are concerned, but are you looking at extending that? Are you looking at getting reservation into corporate India? Is that something that the Congress is looking at?
So I think quite honestly, reservation for women internally as an organization, we have implemented. There are a lot of women in the organization today because we have been given opportunities and also office bearer posts. In the larger policy scheme, or like in Karnataka, I am very, very certain we're coming to power with a thumping victory, irrespective of what anybody else says. And what we're seeing now, I think nationally as a policy, Reservation for women, I think Mrs. Gandhi brought everybody together, got that bill, to move and push past, and then it's been in the cold storage for a long time. I think one thing you have to acknowledge is that the political will with ceding space to women does not exist. It is very, very hard for, let's say, how many ever 500 odd MP seats. It is very hard for any political party to say, I am going to move out 100, 200 plus seats for women. And you won't see too many takers also, especially in the South, maybe.
It's the same in corporate, right? There
Yeah.
is a leaking pipeline. You don't have the talent to replace. And of course, then there's resistance.
I think the resistance and political will, both of them, is something that will slowly change. Because what I see is with the women voters, or rather the skew in the women voters in the country today, I see it as an inevitability where to cater at least to that, the largest vote bank. Because women across the board will form one of the largest denominations of vote banks that you can find. It may just become a political inevitability that political parties will try and take that. Though I must appreciate that my party, irrespective of win or loss in Uttar Pradesh, Priyanka Gandhi ji had the vision that I will offer 40 to 50 seats to women because it is creating...
What happened in Karnataka? Why only 9?
So again, in Karnataka, I was also an aspirant. A lot of us basically did fight. We did have more new faces that have come in. For example, we have a Sujata Dodamani who nobody knew, but she was a Jilla Panchayat president, successively has worked in the constituency, and she was given a ticket. In R.R. Nagar in Bangalore, we have a young educated professor who's been given an opportunity. Our sitting MLAs have been given an opportunity. And I think, yes, there was space for more. And I think over time they will accommodate, because I'm positive, because people like me getting the opportunity is a signaling of more of us here.
It's really a paradox because Karnataka is considered as one of the more progressive states. It features higher up when, on the human development indicators. Literacy levels are fairly high. And then you see this paradox. It's a hall full of men right here. And when it comes to politicians fighting elections, there are hardly any women legislators. And I just gave you the number, 66 years in Bengaluru, only 7 women MLAs. So as a woman leader yourself, I'm just trying to push you to push this agenda in your party.
So I think a lot of us have been very vocal. A lot of us have spoken about far more representation. And I am very certain, I'm very, very certain that there will be more opportunities, but even with all the indices that you talk about, Karnataka still, compared to others, it's much better, is still a largely predominantly rural state. Where even though a lot of women, for example, as I talk about my panchayat members, for example, out of the, what would be 10 male-dominated faces with women as the rubber stamp, now we're at 4 or 5 or 6. And over time, that will change. But overwhelming voter behavior is also tied to these subliminal notions of authority.
I wanted to ask you that. Are women voters making up their mind independently, or are they still influenced by the male members of their family? Because this trend is changing. In certain areas that I've visited, for instance, in Rajasthan, even in Madhya Pradesh, I've spoken to a lot of rural women who have admitted that earlier their vote always went with whatever the family was, whoever the family was voting for, but now they're making their own decisions, and one of the reasons is because of smartphones, so they are able to make up their own mind.
I think one of the interesting or rather peculiar situations is that women largely vote independently now, but political parties are still not giving women the political agency to contest on the other side, to be faces. But for women, I can tell you beyond a doubt that they vote on issues. Because I have seen this in rural Karnataka, that when the Anganwadis, like the Gram Panchayat elections happened right after COVID, and I saw this with so many women that in the Anganwadis, they were not getting the PDS or the ration that they were supposed to on time and whatnot. In areas, women proactively went out and voted against the Panchayat members that did not help them. Today now, price rise is a huge issue. I think for women, that safety net of, some sort of security from the government no longer exists. So I'm very sure that they are also proactively going to vote on that, Shweta.
Okay, let's talk about the youth of Karnataka. About 11 lakh first-time voters are going to be voting in this election. What is the aspiration of the youth that you are picking up? What does the youth of Karnataka want?
So it's one situation that I've seen that in places like Bangalore, children of a lot of, first generation, second generation, middle class, whatever, however you want to categorize them, still have the ability to hope of being a founder of a startup. But for a majority of my state, especially in rural areas, the hope and dream is still a government job. The hope and dream, because they're the first time or generally the first generation educated that are there, for them the opportunity is to have a job that has job security. Because the power to dream comes only when you know that your parents are not waiting for you back home for you to go feed them or for you to run your household. The biggest issue for the youth today, and I believe that the youth are extremely based on hope and aspiration, is to have meaningful employment. Mr. Pai spoke about how many % of people getting jobs under 25,000. For people where we come from, 25,000 is a huge amount. But are they getting those opportunities? No. For the youth today, and I can also link this to what is happening, is that where I come, and largely rural context, I apologize. Where I come from, everybody wants a government job or to work with a cooperative or something like a KMF or one of the dairy unions where they have permanent jobs. But what has happened for them is that for every job, for us they call it call for, which is for the job, there is a certain percentage. So you already are disadvantaged. There's a certain amount that you have to pay to get a job, even for technical jobs and whatnot. Because even though you have an interview, your marks card and everything, you know that after that the selection. So this has really, really dampened the spirit of the youth here. I think the youth want jobs, they're hungry for development, and they are aspirational for a better tomorrow. And I don't see a positive agenda from the incumbent government for the youth. And on the other hand, with the
But none of the political parties are speaking the language of the youth. The Congress isn't and the BJP isn't. You're not talking about jobs. You're not talking about creating many Bangalores in Karnataka. What we are debating and what we are discussing is essentially identity politics.
No, I disagree, because one of the guarantees that the Congress is talking about is something called Yuvanidhi. It is threefold. One, we acknowledge that there are a lot of people coming out into the job market. There's a lot of anxiety when they can't find jobs. For graduates, we offer 3,000 rupees a month, and for diploma holders, 1,500.
That's a dole,
1 second, let
Aishwarya.
me explain. No, I believe
That is
it
a
is
dole.
1 second, let me explain why it's a threefold exercise, right? Why we acknowledge that is for a lot of these people, again, they are first generation graduates trying to go out into the economy and the market and find jobs, which is really hard. So while we offer that for a maximum period of 2 years, the Congress has promised two things. In the state today, there are close to 2.5 to 2.7 lakh vacancies. This is not an acknowledgement for me. This is the Chief Minister himself having said it, which means that there is already a workforce requirement of 2.5, close to 3 lakh, rather, jobs that are there. We want to fill in those vacancies at the earliest, and these inevitably being like Karnataka's jobs will go to our people here, one. And the second thing
Are you
is
talking
we
about
believe...
reservation?
No,
for
we're not
people
talking
of Karnataka?
No. The thing is, by sheer idea of the language requirements for the government jobs here, it inevitably means the people of my state will get a better opportunity to compete for those jobs as opposed to anybody else. And the third is, if you look at, for example, the regional clusters also in our manifesto, there is huge untapped potential, whether it's to make, districts, whether it is sugarcane, whether it's agro-based industry. The Congress has promised a finite timeline to create 10 lakh jobs in this year. And we don't mean in tech or service, but we mean meaningful, decentralized, region-wise jobs.
Tech
so that
jobs
you don't...
are not meaningful?
Pardon?
Aren't tech jobs
No,
meaningful?
I mean tech jobs particularly concentrate in urban pockets. But what we are talking about is to have meaningful employment opportunities based on the geopolitical and the geographical situation, right? Like Belgavi, Hubli, Davangere have their own potential. Where I come from, Mysore has huge potential for agro-based startups and things like that. So there's a decentralized policy framework to ensure two things. One, you cannot overburden urban centers. And the second is that you need to drive economic activity outside of Bangalore and meaningfully to regional areas to fulfill the aspirations of people there. For example, 371J, if you look at Kalyan, Karnataka, just the sheer opportunities it created by offering reservations for those regions is a very positive story for the people of one of the most backward places in the country. So I see this as meaningful change that is diversifying across the state, Shweta, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I do hope that a lot of what you're saying actually fructifies and leads to positive change. Our time's up. But I have to ask you, and you did start by saying that you're going to come back with a thumping majority. I want you to put a number out there on the numbers that you are expecting to win, and 3 things that you think will work or are working for the Congress party to come into power in Karnataka.
So every single one of our surveys, I think the lowest, and I'm not good at math or averaging things out, is somewhere at 114, and the highest we're seeing is 156, I think. I will be a little modest, and I'll say we'll be 138.
We will play we will play this out on counting day. We will play this out.
It's a risk I'm willing to take. I've sat through worse periods. So I'd say 138. But I think 3 things that are definitely working for the Congress party here is, one, it is not rhetoric. We're talking about real issues, whether it is corruption, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is agrarian distress. The Congress has run a very tight campaign on the issues of the people that resonated or that resonate across, and we have amplified that, one. The second thing is, whatever you say, we offer a positive agenda in terms of the guarantees that we're giving, and it's backed up by fact because we've seen it in Rajasthan, whether it was, the old pension scheme. We've seen it in Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh, Himachal, because the Congress governments have taken this very seriously. We have positive guarantees. And the third, and I want not to be, I've tried to keep it as far away from political as possible, but this I have to say. So the minister, came and spoke about all this work that has been done. I see BJP spokespersons talking about all this development. Sadly, however, I have not seen a rally. I have not seen people on the ground of the incumbent government talking about it. They are not talking about the issues. The biggest issue they seem to have found is one line in a 62-page manifesto from my party. Because if they had so much Vikas and whatnot, I don't know what the terminology is, Amrit Kal, Atmanirbhar, I'm sure there's a lot. You would assume that they would talk about what they've done in governance. But none of that is being spoken about because they would prefer a larger, emotive, divisive, us versus them issue. And I think that is not working for them. They're trying, they're clutching at straws. The Congress, however, is not playing into any of that.
The Congress is playing to that. Let's be honest. Let's be honest. The Congress is on the back foot. You've totally taken BJP's line on this. So, but you were fighting a good campaign. You were running a good campaign.
Give me 30 seconds to explain this, right? So, for anybody, the media put it out in a different way, but the simple argument was this. In a state where if there are any organizations, irrespective of denomination, caste or faith, that create communal divide, strife, and promote enmity or hate, or cause violence on the ground, they were like certain organizations, we will take action within the framework of the law. That was essentially what it was. I don't understand why the BJP is so upset that we want to take action against elements that cause hate in society. I don't understand what sort of logic it is for them, because if they are all about good governance, and if they are all about good polity and whatnot, shouldn't they be clapping their hands for us saying we want to cut down on fundamentalist elements in society? But of course not, right? Because you know what it is.
Okay, so anything that you'd like to say to the lovely people of Bangalore who are here today?
I'm sorry I delayed you all from dinner, but thank you all so much for this. It's been a genuine pleasure, and it was very nice.
And do ask them to come out and vote.
Yes, please. And I know for a fact voting is on a Tuesday. I think it's very smart. No long weekends.
It's a Wednesday.
Oh, no, I have to leave on Tuesday to go vote in my village on Wednesday. But please do come out and vote, and you don't get a long weekend, but trust me, it'll be worth it, and make the right choice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Aishwarya, Mahadev. Pleasure speaking with you and wishing you all the very best. I do hope that the next election sees a lot more women candidates, and I hope you're able to take up this cause.
Shweta, please do give a token of appreciation to Aishwarya. Thank you so much. We hope the women and the youth of Karnataka vote independently in the coming elections. Well, with that, we have come to the end of the summit. I hope the stimulating conversations, the wide array of topics covered, and the various aspects deliberated upon at the summit today have given you enough food for thought. With that, I would like to thank all the esteemed panelists, speakers, and the wonderful audience for being a part of today's Moneycontrol's Policy Next, co-powered by Reliance Industries and event partners, Canara Bank, Motilal Oswal, 99acres.com, and Diamond Live Line. And now, please, ladies and gentlemen, please do join us for dinner and enjoy the evening.